Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We do hope you're keeping very, very safe and well. Thank you for joining us on a Monday night. Yes, we normally record on Sunday, but we're back on Monday. Could be on Tuesday, could be on Wednesday. I'm not doing Craig David, don't worry at all. If you're listening to the show for the very first time, you can find us on iTunes, on Spotify and Audio Boom. We're across a range of different social media platforms. We're, of course, on Twitter at Last Word on Spurs. We're on Facebook and Instagram too. And as you know, Spurs have not ruined our weekends. We are just warming up. Delighted to have alongside me. He's back on this crazy Conte train, we call it. I've got our co-host, Lee McQueen's in the house. Lee, lovely to have you back here. How are you?
Yeah, very good, Rick. Thank you. And good to be on with Jamie and Adam. It's been a while for me being on with these two lovely, fantastic fellas. And good evening to all of the viewers and, of course, the listeners. So looking at that fantastic result that we had at the weekend. The snowmobiles out and, the undersoil heating obviously failing. Man City managed to get their game on and clear their pitch, but obviously Burnley didn't. And like I tweeted earlier in the week, it's weird, actually. You know, when you really, really know if a team fancies it, when it's a really bitterly cold, windy day in Burnley. Hang on a minute, Burnley didn't fancy it, did they? I'm sure we'll get into it, Rick.
We will indeed. Delighted to have returning back to the show. Currently doing the same train that I think Antonio Conte is doing, hence the reason we haven't had him much on this season. We've got the great Jamie Brown over at the Daily Hotspur. Jay, lovely to have you here. Nice to have you on. How are you, my friend? You well?
Yeah, really great to be back on. I was pretty pleased the game was off at the weekend. I think I saw the conditions and you just knew that a lot of those players were never going to be up for it. I think we've gone to a lot of... I'll say this, Jason will hate me for saying this. We've gone to a lot of difficult places to go, and Burnley with conditions like that, you just know that team, having gone to Mora, having gone to other places in the Europa Conference League that have been difficult to go to, I think they would not have fancied it at all on the weekend. So I'm quite glad that the game was kind of going to be rescheduled. So it should be a positive time. We've just appointed an amazing manager, but I'm sure, as we'll discuss, there's a lot of work to be done on this squad. I think before we're kind of in a position where we might start doing something under him. So let's see.
Oh, man. The irony, Jay, just as you mentioned his name, he pops up. Can't make it up. There you go. Jason McGovern. Are we talking transfers? If so, can I watch something else?
Jay, you know it.
Well, I mean, Jamie's here, so listen, I can't promise that we won't be talking transfers at some point. What we will be talking, of course, is Spurs' finances, and that's why we've got the great Adam Osper back on the Last Word on Spurs. Ad, lovely to have you. I think it's twice in the last 3 weeks. Thank you for blessing us with your presence. How are you?
All good. Thanks for having me back. I think we just said before that we all, once we knew Lee was joining us, we all went off and did our hair to make sure that we looked as pristine as he does.
And then he puts the suit on. You can't make it up.
Yes, I didn't go that far. I took my tracksuit off it and put a jumper on. Right?
I'm chilly, man. Yeah. I'll take the jacket off that when we heat up.
Very quickly, say hello. Wayne Routledge is watching. He's just messaged me.
Good old Wayne.
Right, Wayne.
Watching.
How you getting on, fella?
Hi, mate.
As it goes at the moment, Wayne might get a game if we can displace Bergvine. I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be too sure. Who knows what's going on with Stephen Bergvine? Could do a job, most certainly. Guys, only one place to start, of course. Now, I'll be honest, for personal reasons, yes, they kind of worked out really well for me. It was my son's first birthday. So I'll be honest, my wife was delighted when she heard it was called off. The emphatic celebrations, not because Spurs didn't actually ruin my weekend, but also we actually got a clean sheet. Good bill of health, and we had a fantastic day. So I can't really complain at all. It's been a great weekend in the Sachs household. But Lee, let's come to you because, of course, that game was called off a little under an hour before kickoff due to heavy snow at Turf Moor. The snow began to fall in the late morning. They attempted to clear the pitch, which began, I'd say, around 90 minutes before the scheduled 2:00 kickoff, but it proved in vain. Lee, there's been this talk already that this undersoil heating that had been on all night, apparently, according to Burnley, but was unable to cope with the conditions. Does it surprise you, a club that are quite well established in the Premier League, just could not get this game on? What's your thoughts on it?
I mean, I'm going to caveat what I say with the fact that I don't want to lay into Burnley too much and all that sort of stuff. Do you know what I mean? But it is a bit embarrassing, isn't it, viewers and listeners? Like, you're a Premier League club, an established Premier League club, and you can't get a Premier League game on. I also think it is a bit strange as well that actually changing the kickoff time could have been an option as well. When you look at other sports, for example, like Formula One, right? I'm a big into my Formula One as well. They have like weather data radars and stuff like that, making sure that, coming in so they can change the tyres and all that sort of stuff. When you're watching cricket, for example, to bring the covers on or to bring the covers off, everyone's looking at the weather. It didn't just like dump all of a sudden like 3 foot of snow, like with no one knowing about it. And also it stopped snowing as well. I was watching a Man City game and it looked absolutely horrific in terms of the conditions. And at half time, once they finished at half time, the pitch was completely covered. Within 20 minutes, it was delayed by 5 minutes. I'll give them that. The pitch was completely clear. So my frustration is not so much from me. I wasn't traveling to the game, right? So, I would have been just watching it at home. It's the fans that have to travel up there. I mean, one of our own, Chris Cowling, he goes to every single game, home and away, regardless of what the conditions are. I was actually meant to go to Mura with him on Thursday in Slovenia, and I booked my flights and all that sort of stuff. But I had to work, so I had to let him down last minute. But he went. He was 227 fans that went. He was one of them. Then he gets back, probably like the other 227 fans. Then they go up to Burnley, and within 50 minutes before kickoff, it's called off. So I'm frustrated and passionately frustrated for them because they decided to do that. Now, having said all of that, when you see the ball on the pitch and the conditions, it did look horrendous. But at the end of the day, I think it could have been handled better, Rick, to be fair. And I just feel that actually that might be a blessing in disguise for them because they had 3 or 4 players out, but it almost might be a blessing in disguise for us as well. Although, like Adam said in the green room, maybe we would have got a massive reaction because Thursday night was massively embarrassing for our football club, and maybe Burnley would have got the backlash of that.
Yeah, I mean, Jay, let's come over to you because, officials feared that even if the pitch could be cleared sufficiently for the match to start, further delays would have likely happened due to the nature of the game and having to regularly clear the lines, as Lee just mentioned there. What I did find quite funny was, true to form, you saw Sean Dyche carried out his own pitch inspection with just the shirt on. As you know, to leave the microphone along the... we saw a lot of these... I think there's a lot of Spurs coaching staff out there as well. And Ben Davies at one point resembling an ice cream cone. Tell us what your thoughts were, ahead of this match. And when you saw those reports coming through, Jay, as obviously you're reporting on Daily Hotspur, was you ever confident the game would go ahead when you saw those conditions?
Well, yes, I thought so because it's a Premier League club. You'd think that they'd have the necessary things in place to be able to remove those sort of conditions. So I think it was really, really poor. I mean, you see the number of supporters you had travelling up there. I know I had some mates as well that travelled up there. They would have a very difficult time getting trains up into Burnley. And then they get there and the game's called off by the time. So I thought that was really poor. I think Livingston, one of the Scottish teams, they were playing Rangers and they had snow there and they were able to get their game on. So, if a club like that was able to prepare for a game, then it's just bizarre that Burnley weren't able to do the same. But I think, as we said, I think it was better for Spurs not to play in those conditions. You can imagine that a pitch like that would have much better suited Burnley. As I said, I just don't feel our players would have been up for those sort of conditions. And, we've seen the mentality of a lot of these players. I've said we've gone into some horrible places and we always seem to struggle. So I wasn't too bothered. I wasn't too worried that it was called off because I was really, really kind of dreading it, especially after that Mura performance. So I don't think it was the end of the world that the game was called off, but it's just so poor that a Premier League club, because of weather conditions, that was getting a game called up. As I said, Livingston, they got their game on. So, really, really poor from Burnley, to be honest.
Yeah. Peter Simmons jokes coming in the next 4 games called off. I think Pete wants to say it all the way up to the end of the January transfer window. I'm sure me and Jamie would like that as well. I'm sure Lee would be a fan of that. Ads, let's bring you in. I think the interesting thing at the moment is, as we understand, and we're recording, of course, on Monday night, there's been no details given about the rescheduling of this fixture. We have heard some news from Spurs today that they're going to offer fans free coach travel for that arranged fixture. So the original ticket will still count. I think finding now a gap for this fixture this side of the year is going to be very, very tricky. But of course, Spurs are still in all competitions, which is still a lovely thing to say. Ads, your thoughts on what was a bit of a chaotic Sunday, really. First fixture may have been on, may have been off. It was going backwards and forwards. I mean, is it a good thing for Tottenham?
Well, I think I said before when we were having a bit of a chat. I think, so normally what would happen if you played a game on the Sunday, and obviously we're playing Thursday, Monday would have been a recovery day. Tuesday there would have been a bit of a training session. Wednesday it would have been probably match preparation, and then you got the game. So actually it gives probably Conte, who's massive on fitness, probably give him a big double session on Sunday. It probably went pretty hard, and he probably go pretty hard at them 2 days, Sunday, Monday, and then it gives you a little bit more prep time. I mean, the bit that I don't get about it is, pitches now are like pristine, and I know I sound too old, but I remember as a kid just watching snow. You just lob the orange ball out and crack on, didn't you?
Yeah.
They would just, make sure you could see the lines and the corner flags, and everyone would just crack on. But I think there's an element of because modern day footballers are used to these amazing conditions and pitches, going out and playing in snow would have been, completely foreign to them all, and they wouldn't have known what to do and stuff like that, and it would have been frozen. And I think Jamie made the point that might well have suited Burnley to Sanchez, watching him ice skating around.
Just quickly on that, just before we read out Adrian's comment there, City got their game on, and it was look, was it as bad? I don't know. I weren't in either of the locations, but it looked horrific in City, and they got their game on.
It's how they bounce the ball and stuff, and they bounce the ball and roll it and go, no, you can't play in that. It's like, just get on with it.
Yeah,
You'll be able to play once they start running around. It will go slushy and stuff like that. But I think, sorry, to your original question, I think it probably, I don't think it's a bad thing, because I think it, it gives Conte that, Sunday to Wednesday, proper prep, and to get into them again, which is needed after last week, right?
I totally agree. Yeah, I do. I mean, do you know what? We have to say though. I mean, I know people look at it, and Lee, you picked up on it. I mean, it is a bit of a farce when this is supposedly the best league in the world, right? We say the Premier League is, and games are getting called off 50 minutes before kickoff. I mean, it is simply outrageous. You've got fans, and we have to say it's fans, journos travelling around there 4 hours there and back. We saw obviously Ali Gold as well. And also what I couldn't understand is the very vague communication from both clubs. There wasn't much coming out of either club at all in the morning to even suggest it. Even to the point where Spurs, of course, we're going to come on to it in a second, they released the team.
That's what I mean. They thought they were playing like 1 hour, right? 1 hour before the team gets released. And it's what I mean. I know the couple from Dallas have got loads of headlines and that sort of stuff. And, this week at 31 hour round trip. But it's not just them types of individuals. It sounds massively long trip. Of course it is. But it's everyone else that goes up and down. I mean, one of our own TJ as well, he was doing it. He was going up and down the motorway. Like Ali Gold, like friend of the show, he's doing it. Like this is, to do it 50 minutes before the game. It wasn't as if that it might be on or it might be off 4 hours before the game. Like it wasn't even an hour before, like you say. It was just like, oh yeah, it's almost like the snow came, and maybe it did. Maybe it just went bang. But I just find it weird. But look, it didn't happen. Didn't ruin our weekends. And we, like Ad said, Conte now can get into the team more than what he could have. So I'd have personally liked the 3 points banked in the bag. Yeah. The table would have looked a lot nicer today looking at it. 1 point off of the top four. But now we've got to be like, well, if we win our game in hand, we might be. So it's a bit frustrating, to be fair.
Yeah, I've got to ask you, Lee, to stick with you. Nathan Evans on the screen says, what do you think of Harry Kane's gesture for the couple who flew 4,000 miles for the game to be postponed? And what I will say is I know Saxy Ken personally. He's a lovely bloke. The irony is, obviously, a lot of people have now screen grabbed that tweet of him criticising.
Not good, is it?
Harry Kane. I'm not sure if Harry's going to get around to see that at any point, but it was a nice gesture from Kane, wasn't it? Of course.
It just goes to show you how much these players read or don't read social media in whichever way you want to context it out, because obviously you read social media to find out about the trip and to offer it out, but he clearly hasn't seen some of the comments previously, because otherwise he wouldn't have been offering it, would he? Because he was quite damning, wasn't he, on Harry's performances and what to do with Harry. If you haven't seen the screen grab, it's all over social media, so I'm sure the viewers and listeners can see it.
I'm sure Ken will be very happy with me sharing it now, bearing in mind probably Harry Kane. We know Harry Kane watches this show, so sorry to Ken in advance. Sorry to Ken in advance if those tickets do get revoked. It's not a disclaimer. Do not come and see Last Word on Spurs. We have absolutely nothing to do with it. You can come get some tickets from us, Ken, if you want, but you'll be sitting like outside the stadium or something. You won't be going no box with Harry Kane, that's for sure. Jay, let's come round to you. You know what? We have had a question in. I know you've partly answered this. Portfolio King says, do we think the outcome was the best result this for the team and for Conte. Extra time to get these players fitter without the possibility of dropping points. He personally thinks it was a great outcome. Do you see it that way for you, Jay?
Yeah, I think Adam was kind of spot on in saying that it will be a good thing in terms of Conte. We'll get more time to work with the players. As I said, maybe today would have been a tough training session, maybe a double training session. And we can see these players clearly need that. That's exactly what we need. We need to be working on the training ground. We need to be working on tactical, that side of the game. So in a way, I'm quite pleased. I think the big concern is when this fixture is going to get rescheduled, because the fixture schedule is already completely manic. So to kind of have to fit in another fixture is definitely going to be a big concern. But I think given the conditions, given that where we are as a team, Conte's just taken over. I think that the time will be better used on the training field. So I think for Spurs, it was maybe the right outcome. Yes, we'd all, we do sometimes we joke about hating to have watched Spurs, but I think we all would have been looking forward to that game regardless. We still love watching Spurs. So a little bit of disappointment, but I think overall, I think neither side complaining. And we saw Antonio Conte as well. He seemed fairly kind of okay about the game being called off. He saw the conditions. He saw it just wasn't right to play the match. So I think maybe even he was slightly pleased that he'll get time to work on the training pitch.
Thanks, David, by the way. It's very nice. It's very nice, David. Thank you.
Lot of love in those comments tonight. Jay, just sticking with you for a second before I bring ads in. There is that myth that Burnley had no intention of trying to get this game played because they had a lot of injuries and suspensions to a number of key players. Of course, and Ashley Westwood, James Tarkowski suspended, Jay Rodriguez, Ashley Barnes, Dale Stevens, Matej Vidra all out injured. Do you buy that at all? I know Jason is not having that whatsoever. Do you personally buy it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, obviously, I think that was the thing. That was the big thing. They were without some real key players, so maybe that would have been, maybe the right time to play them. I think James Tarkowski is a decent centre back for them, and he certainly would have kind of caused Harry Kane problems. So it's disappointing that maybe we won't have that opportunity to play them without him. So that is disappointing. But there you go. That's Jason saying it all about his favourite player.
Yeah, Ndombele. We're not having that Ndombele debate tonight because we've been there, done that on that WhatsApp group, and it's forever ongoing. I'm actually not involved for once. Let's bring you back in because ahead of the game, Antonio Conte did make a host of changes. We just want to discuss briefly that team lineup because it was always expected that he would revert back to a similar team that beat Leeds United, although Conte had made 2 alterations to that 11 for the showdown. Japhet Tanganga missed out on selection, and Davinson Sanchez got the nod on the right of the back three, which I think was surprising for some, given that performance that we saw in Moura, of course, and Oliver Skipp back in the side after missing out 1 week ago through suspension. Steven Bergvine returned to the matchday squad following his absence against Moura, with Joe Rodon missing out on the squad completely. And now, thoughts when you saw that team, just to rattle that one off that we went with, we had Lloris, Sanchez, Dyer, Davis, Emerson, Højbjerg, Skipp, Reguilon, Lucas, Kane, Son. On paper, did that surprise you at all when you saw that team that would have played?
No. I thought, the only... No. If you look at the team, it's been relatively consistent. Most of those players pick themselves. I think the only ones you're going to argue about is Sanchez for someone. I know Sanchez was terrible against Moura, but I'm not quite sure. Tanganga didn't play particularly well in a 3. Is Rodon left-footed as well? So maybe he doesn't suit playing.
I don't think he is. No,
is he not?
No.
I don't know. But again, I'm not quite sure.
We haven't seen him enough to know even what foot he is.
He's not left-footed.
You've got to assume that Dyer is going to play in the middle, obviously, and probably you'd want somebody who you'd think is a bit more mobile either side of him. So maybe you'd think Sanchez might be a bit more mobile than Rodon. But, we're splitting hairs, right? But obviously the thing with Rodon is it's three or four managers now and he hasn't got a game. So there must be a reason there. There's got to be something there that's happening
I agree.
That we're not seeing in training that for the reason for him not getting picked. But apart from that, the other one, which we've gone about, is central midfield. I think I said this a couple of weeks ago when you had me on that I think Skipp plays.
Yeah.
I think he's been the best central midfielder and he's been one of our best players all season. There's debate about Højbjerg. Skipp and Højbjerg has zero creativity. And I think, but again, no one that played midweek can deserve to get in the game ahead of Moura, even though I'd rather Moura didn't play, but no one did anything. So, and Ndombele didn't do anything to get himself a game and stuff like that. So this team sort of picked itself.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, Jay, to come around to you, Geraint Williams asked the question. There's again a lot of comments on this saying, what has Rodon got to do to get a game? Now, obviously, today we've seen Ali Gold come out on, I think, doing an article where he suggests that Joe Rodon would be open to a move in January, potentially maybe a loan move, or who knows what could come of that. I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Jay? Has he been harshly treated, or do you just think it's a case where he's had a number of managers watch him in training now? Of course, from we go from Mourinho to obviously Ryan Mason, now to Nuno Espirito Santo, and now, of course, Antonio Conte. Is it unfair treatment, or is he just simply not good enough for the level where we're going to need these defenders to play, in your opinion, based on what we've got around them?
Well, personally, for me, I do quite like Joe Rodon, and I would like to see him get more opportunities. I think if you look on the pitch in terms of the other centre-backs' performances, maybe only Dyer and potentially Ben Davies are the only ones that have really shown that they are kind of worthy of their place in the starting 11. Of course, Romero, he'll be out for a while. But for me, Joe Rodon is kind of an absolute prime example of why Spurs have really struggled over the last couple of years. I remember at the time, Jose Mourinho was desperately wanting a new central defender. He wanted Milan Skriniar. And then, of course, he was given Joe Rodon. And that's kind of been the problem, where we've gone and signed all these players. We're going to sign maybe these alternatives to our top targets. And then these alternatives are then never played. And then, of course, that when you're not playing, that, of course, makes you really frustrated. That, of course, having a player like that in the dressing room is not good. You know, we've seen it with Steven Bergvine, of course. Again, another kind of example of that where, you know, we've gone and signed an alternative. And I think that Joe Rodon is kind of a prime example of that. We signed a guy, we wanted Milan Skriniar, we got an alternative with Joe Rodon, and we've just got too many players like that in the squad. So for me personally, I would like to see more of Joe Rodon. As I said, we've seen, you know, he's played a lot for Wales. He's done a decent job for Wales. So I think he deserves a bit more of a chance. But obviously the managers just don't fancy him. Again, Adam said it, you know, that's now 3 managers that haven't fancied him. So clearly there is something in that situation.
Does he play in a 3 for Wales? Do they play 3 at the back with him?
They play 3. I mean, because you see Ben Davies, that's where he's really excelled, doesn't he? So,
does he play in the middle of the 3 for Wales? Rodon.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll have to.
This is the beauty of live recording now. Everyone's frantically going to.
No, he does. But they changed their system. I think their last game that they played, you have to check this, but I think they actually played a 4. And Davies played as a centre back, left-sided centre back, and Rodon played as a right-sided centre back.
So I just think that my guess would be in Conte's formation, if we're talking about him only, that in a 3, Dyer's been fine this season. I know he's had a lot of criticism, you know, over last season and stuff like that, but actually Dyer's been fine this season. And in a 3 in the centre, I think he's actually quite good when he's got a bit of mobility around him. So I think it's got to have something to do with that. Maybe if you've got Dyer in the middle and Rodon on the right, you're like, is that mobile enough on that side?
Just looking at Wales' teams.
TTID forever. TTID forever. I totally agree. I think Wales is Rodon's level. I mean, we're talking about international football. I get that, but we're also talking about international football that Wales play against far lesser teams typically than others. So I just think that I think you would nail on the head, Jamie. Right? Fact of the matter is, we wanted Milan Skriniar, and we ended up getting Joe Rodon, and that's no disrespect to him, but like you said, Ads, right? 3 managers don't fancy him. There's something not right there, and we're trying to put him into a situation. He's just not good enough for the team. He might put his head in there. He might just crack on or something and put his body on the line. But he's not what we need. Where does he line up? Right, Conte, 1,000,000% is playing 3 at the back, 100%. Where does he line up? He ain't going to take the centre spot because that's Romero, in my opinion, or Dyer. Dare I say it? That's what Conte's playing.
At the moment, it seems that way. You can't see that changing.
Exactly. On the left-hand side, this is my humble opinion, but you have to have a left-sided centre-back. You have to have one. The balance in the team is just far better when Ben Davies.
I think that's why, though, isn't it? I think that's why he is picking Davies, because it isn't, not being funny. If it was about ability or pace, Davies wouldn't be there, but it is like you said, left-sided preference.
I totally agree, but he is a left-sided, genuine left-sided centre-back. So if you had a genuine left-footed centre-back, Jan Vertonghen, for example, he played there all week, wouldn't he? He played all day long. Or Pau Torres, or is it Pau Torres over in Villarreal? Genuine left-sided, like all these centre backs that have been linked with us, or that we're probably getting to, and that's your thing. But they have to be left-sided if you're going to get rid of Ben Davies. The reason why Ben Davies is having a resurgence, if you like, is because generally he's a left-sided player, so it gives it balance. So then you put on the other side, the right side, you've got Sanchez, you've got Dyer, you've got Rodon, you've got Tanganga. All of them can play on that right side. So are we generally going to get rid of all four of them players and then bring in another 30, 40, 50, 60 million pound right-sided centre-back?
I think actually Davis will excel in this formation. And I think it's going to take a bit of time. And I know a lot of people will probably completely disagree with that. We haven't really seen the best of Ben Davis, but I do genuinely think a back three playing as a left-sided centre-back, I think that will suit him better. We know defensively that's always kind of been his strength. We've also seen under Antonio Conte, I think in his Inter Milan side, he had Bastoni, who was a centre-back who'd often push forward. And I think with Ben Davies, he's obviously more of a mobile central defender. So I can kind of see him doing that role. I mean, we'll have to see long term whether he's actually good enough to do that. But I think he's definitely got a real chance here to kind of stake his claim in the team.
And Jamie, just on that, then, do you think that this squad needs absolute surgery? We all know that, and that's what we're getting into now. But Jamie, do you think, and Ricky and Ads, do you think that just from a centre-back perspective, would you rather replace Davies with a genuine left-sided centre-back and keep the right-sided centre-backs that we've got? Or would you actually rather keep Davies as a left-sided centre-back alongside Romero and replace Dyers or the Sanchez's or the Tangangas or the Rodons?
I'm going to be fussy. I'm going to be fussy and say both, but I know you. That's probably not your question, right?
For me personally, I'd definitely say like kind of a right-sided. I think Davies has got a chance now. I'm not necessarily saying he's going to be the answer, but I think he's got that opportunity to go and prove himself. We've seen him; he's done it at Wales. And again, you've got to caveat that and say, yes, of course, it is international football. It's a very different level to kind of Premier League football, but he's kind of played that role. And as I said, Conte liked to have a more versatile centre-back in Bastoni in his Inter Milan side. He played a very successful role there, and I think Davies could kind of play a similar role, but we're going to have to see whether he's actually good enough, because I think he's got the ability to do it, but let's see over the next couple of games whether he's actually going to be able to be up to the task. So for me, definitely a right side. I'd rather go and look to replace Davinson Sanchez or Eric Dyer, and then have Romero and potentially Ben Davies, or if we have to, go and get another left-sided centre-back.
That's two centre-backs, right? So January, go on, Ed.
I think that they need two centre-backs. I think if we're assuming Romero's fit and playing, I think they'll replace Davis first. I think you'll see Dyer sit in the middle with Romero on the right and a Romero type mobile player on the left. I think Dyer in a 3 is more secure because he's not going to get spun as much. He's not the most mobile, and when you play with the 3, you have one guy who's quite vocal, solid, decent in the air, which is what Dyer is really. He's okay. He's not all. I don't think he's great in a 2. You get Romero quite mobile. You get rid of Davis and get a taller centre back. Another tall 6'2", 3'4", mobile, left-footed centre back, and I think that would be more solid. But I think with Romero being out, then yeah, I mean probably somebody on the right. I'm not quite sure. I'd be interested to see Tanganga, where you mentioned him, given a go in that 3-4-3. Can you read this? Batesy, how's it going, mate? Look.
I'm gonna give Jay a chance to save himself, because the comments this is the beauty of doing these shows live, right? Because obviously when you say a comment, next one you get it on Twitter, but you get it actually live in your face right away. Jay,
what are you? Do you have YouTube on watching it?
Comments on the side. I'm seeing the comments on the side. Absolutely roasted for Davis comments. I think.
Jay, do you want to say anything more on Davis?
Yeah, just on Davis.
I didn't know this existed.
I'm not necessarily saying that he's got the quality to play that role. I just think he's got the profile to kind of fit that role. Again, will we actually see that he's good enough to play that role? I don't know. I'm not saying that he's the answer. He's good enough to play that role, but I think he's got that kind of that right profile to play that left-sided centre back. We saw again, Bastoni played a similar role, and maybe Ben Davies might be the answer, but according to comments, he's definitely not.
Nicely saved, Jay.
I think in defence of Jamie and in the defence of Davis, the one
who's watching this right now?
The one thing is, like, I think he's a brilliant squad player. I think he's the type of player that even if he's not really good, he gives 110%. He's probably a great trainer. He probably doesn't cause any problems behind the scenes. He probably doesn't cause any problems in the dressing room, whether he's in the team or not. He may not be good enough, but I think he's the right type of person to have in your squad. You need players like that. But I don't think he's obviously good enough to be in our starting 11 if you want to go forward.
Yeah, that's fair. One player I do want to finish on, Jay, just want to come over to you because I think it's a story that you broke recently over at Daily_Hotspur, is that Steven Bergvine, from what we understand from, again, you tell me, Jay, if you think it's a reputable source, but talks that information we hear is that Bergvine has only been spoken to twice by Antonio Conte and isn't in the long-term plans of Antonio Conte's Spurs side. Yeah. How would you rate that story that's come through in the last?
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was from the Telegraph in Holland, and they're very. I think they've been very reliable. I think they were definitely the first to kind of break the story of Steven Bergvine coming to Spurs. So I definitely treat that as kind of a reputable source. And they were saying that Conte has hardly ever spoken to Bergvine. He's not at all in his Bergvine's not at all in Conte's plans. And they actually said that Inter Milan were trying to sign Bergvine whilst he was at PSV, and Conte said, "No, I don't want him at the club. He's not a player that I want to sign." So we saw that against, in the squad. He wasn't even selected for Moura. There was no injury. It was kind of one that completely came out of the blue. I think it was Alistair Gold that kind of broke that story in terms of saying that he wasn't in the squad, and it was out of nowhere. But clearly, he just doesn't fancy Steven Bergvine, and I think I remember his reaction after the Leeds result. We saw Conte going mental, celebrating with some of the players, and you saw Steven Bergvine. He just looked very, very disappointed. So for me, he's definitely a player I think that will look to move on in January. They were also saying that Ajax probably won't have the funds to sign him permanently in January, but they're looking to sell David Neres, who's a very similar player. So maybe if they can get him sold, they might have the funds to get Bergvine. But I think it's difficult to see him going back to Holland because those sort of clubs aren't going to have the sort of money we'll want to sell him for.
Lee, let's come around to you quickly on Steven Bergvine. I think, to be fair, for me personally, he's a player that has in periods really flattered to deceive. There's been times I've been really excited by the way he's played. Other times I was thinking, why has he played so within himself? I do feel, and we joked this at the time, Lee, and you did make me absolutely crack up in tears when you said, take the shackles, take the shackles off from Mourinho, put them on Conte, and make sure he doesn't leave, doesn't walk out of the club early doors. But I just wonder with Bergvine, is there more to come, Lee, or have we seen the best of him? What do you think personally with Steven Bergvine?
Well, I find it fascinating that the story Jamie's talking about there about Conte not even talking to him, don't fancy him. Jose Mourinho didn't fancy him, if any of you remember. When he first came, Jose Mourinho actually admitted that it wasn't his first choice, and he didn't really see him coming into the club. Yes, he burst onto the scene. He scored that wonderful goal against Manchester City when we beat him 2-0. And gave it all I can't do it, but that thing. And he scored some big goals. He scored a big goal against Manchester United, didn't he, as well? And one of the criticisms we've had, whether or not you love him or you hate him, one of the criticisms that I share with Jason actually is that Eric Lamela, for example, never scored big goals for all the years that he was at the club. He's just obviously got a prize tonight, didn't he, for the Puskas Award, didn't he, for the best goal for the Rabona. But other than that, he don't score big goals in the sense of like winning match goals. And Lucas Moura's obviously done it, and Bergvine's done it as well. But Bergvine has just gone off the absolute boil under Jose Mourinho. He become an absolute shadow of the player himself. When we signed him, 27 million quid from PSV, he was fast. He was exciting. He got the ball down. He would play, take the shackles off. There was no shackles. He was just going to go and have a go. But now he's just literally a shadow of himself. So yes, Rick, I think he's done. And you know, with the greatest respect to Stevie, I think whether or not he's a nice guy or not, I don't know the fella. So I'm only judging based on playing and so on and so forth. I want my football club, our football club, our wonderful club, to succeed, and I just can't see it succeeding with Steven Bergvine if the reports are true that the manager don't fancy him. Because if the manager don't fancy you, you're done. And you know, I've got a list of players that I'm hopeful we're going to have enough.
We're going to come on to we are going to come to the after break.
There's a load of them here that they need to go.
Yeah. Let's come around to you, Ed, to quickly close this on Bergvine, and then let's say conclude this segment on Burnley, and we can move on. For you, Ed, you know, a lot of people paid into a lot of things last week when we saw Conte hugging each individual player after Leeds, and with Bergvine, it was almost like he couldn't wait to get away from him. I mean, how much do you read into that personally when I say you've dealt with footballers in the past? Should we be reading too much into this?
Not really. I mean, I think, the other thing which can't read much into is you've just read Conte's only spoken to him twice. It's a paper in Holland. It's probably come from somebody linked to him. Do we know how many times he's spoken to Son or anybody else? He may not have spoken to anyone, so you don't really know that. I disagree with Lee, actually, on he came on and he was really exciting. I think it's a little bit like Region, whatever his name is. You know how to say it.
Oh, we just call him Serge on here, I think, now, just to avoid any debates.
You know, they have a really good debut and everyone gets really excited. Bergwijn had a really good debut and scored in it. I don't remember him tearing it up for Spurs and bursting past people. I remember him scoring a couple of good goals. I remember him getting the ball and generally not doing too much with it. And then he became a bit of a workhorse under Jose, and he was never destroying anybody. And I think I got told last.
I think that's what I just said, didn't I?
You said he was tearing it up when he first came.
I don't think I ever used the words tearing it up at all, Ed. I think what I said was he burst onto the scene with a goal on his debut.
I'll let you.
He scored against Manchester United, and then since then the shackles were on him.
Right,
yellow card.
All right, I'll let you.
That's exactly what I said. Let's have it right.
All right, mate. And I think I was told that I think when Conte came in, he's got a general issue around body weight. And apparently there's 4 or 5 players in the squad that aren't at the body weight level or body fat level that they need to be, and he's one of them, which is sort of a little bit doesn't surprise me. You know, he's been injured a lot. Again, I think if you look at some of the problems with Spurs, if I could just go into, I think a lot of it is. I
think we got 4 hours.
But just I think it's very comfortable for a lot of players, right? So I reckon he's come over, getting paid well. He's young. He's a bit like Ndombele, nice and comfortable, getting paid well, and so on. Does he have the real appetite and desire to be an absolute top player to take us where we want, like a lot of the players in the squad? And the answer is probably no.
And ketchup's having to do with that. Just to confirm, ketchup is the problem.
They like mayonnaise in Holland, in fairness, which is probably a bit worse.
They like it on their fries, don't they? Just on that, if I can interact with you there, as well. I think I don't know his name, so I'm not giving him credit. But there's a guy that we were chatting about the other day that works with a squad all of the time. He's always in and around a squad. He's part of the coaching staff, and I think he's like player liaison or
I know
something
yeah.
like that. Looks after a player.
Ball bloke.
Yeah, I was being careful.
You
know what I mean? It's like just because you've got a lot of hair. But no, I mean, all jokes aside.
Listen, for anybody that is bald, that wasn't a generalisation there at all. I'm just trying to put a name to the image.
He was talking to you, Bates. He was talking to you.
That's it. He's talking to Jason. Bless
him. Now it's going to pile in. I'm going to get the governor all over me now. Jesus.
Jason's going to be all over you. No, look, I mean, I suppose the point I'm trying to make is, as you mentioned about, they're coming over, they've got a comfortable life. I mean, everyone waffles on about, including myself, by the way, best training ground, best stadium, this, that, and the other, and they are quite comfortable. I just wonder whether or not players nowadays, now you'll probably know more about this than anyone, to be fair, in the line of work that you're into as well, is that some of the players, and we've got Wayne watching as well, right? Wayne Ratch is obviously a professional footballer.
Jason and Paul is at it there, disgusting bullies.
Yeah, they are.
Jesus Christ.
Have player liaison officers and people like this got a bigger role to play? Because settling in. I mean, you could argue or debate. Let's say that we could debate Tunga and Dembele till the cows come home, but no one can say that he's ripped it up or whatever in the Premier League at all. And he's been here this is his third season. So is that a settling in? Is that a home life? Sometimes we do forget. And I'm not sticking up for anyone, but sometimes they're 22, 23 years old. 21 years old, like they're youngsters coming into a new world, into a new environment. I remember watching, I can't remember what it was on, if it's on Spurs TV or not, but I remember Stevie Bergvine coming over and he was getting shown around a flat and he had to go and get a flat or something, and it was so alien to him.
Amazon, this is Amazon or nothing.
Oh, it was on Amazon, yeah. It was on Amazon, yeah.
So on that, most every club, I mean, Man City have got a huge department for player liaison. And most clubs do, because the whole idea of it is you bring the players in and you make everything as easy for them as possible off the pitch so they can perform on it. So I don't think that's the problem, because every top club has it. And even, when even go in the Championship, they have player liaison. The problem is that, which is why Conte's been brought in, is there's no winners or leaders in the squad. So if you want to bring in these Bergvines, all of these young players, you have to have around them players that have won leagues, that want to go on and win the league, rather than a big raft of 8 players who are 24 years old being paid big money, where they've got everything they want off the pitch and they've got amazing facilities and so on. It's like, it has to come from within to give you that desire.
What a life almost,
to go on.
What a life for 24, 25.
Which is what Conte is, which is why Conte's here, basically.
Yeah. Agree. Guys, we are going to go for our first break of the show. To anyone that we've offended that hasn't got hair, listen, we do apologise out there sincerely. Jason McGovern is going absolutely ballistic at the moment. We're going to try and calm Jason down, because he's coming on the next few weeks, and we can't afford to lose Jason for a second time.
Keith is watching as well. He hasn't got much hair either.
Okay. Well, anyone we've offended during who hasn't got hair, thank you for standing by with us. We've got nearly over 500 of you watching us live. Thank you so much for a non-game night, as always. Thank you, as always, for amazing support for the Last Word on Spurs. Just to finish up on this segment here, Conte felt the decision was right to postpone Sunday's game. You're going to hear from Antonio Conte next during this break for our listeners on audio. You're also going to hear from Sean Dyche, who gives his thoughts as to that postponement of the game. Referee Peter Banks, just to kind of sum this up, he said it was a joint decision from both clubs, but there's been a lot of good work from everyone trying to get it on, that's for sure. I'm not sure how convincing that was. As things stand now for Spurs, we are still, I believe, 7th, 4 points from the current top 4. So not too much damage, of course, over the weekend. But next, we are going to discuss the surgery needed in the Spurs squad. We're going to let Lee unleash on that blue book. And, of course, Antonio Conte's interview they done recently this week in terms of what needs to change for Tottenham. That is what we're getting into next year in the Last One on Spurs, guys. So, yeah, I mean, we saw that big interview that Antonio Conte gave. I think it was, and Jamie, you're probably best to know this rather than me. Was it to Italian media, the interview he gave, where he was discussing winning would be beautiful with Tottenham because it would be something quite unique? Lee, let's start with you.
I think it was Jason's favourite sauce.
Oh, sorry, Jason. Yeah, sorry. Gazzetta d'Italia, one of Jason's favourite there, of course. We're going to come on to Calcio Mercato and Tuta Mercato later on with Jamie. We've got loads of transfer rumours. So Jason, stick around for that. Lee, to start with you, you've discussed, obviously, the need for real open surgery for this group. Tell us, Lee, how much surgery is needed in your opinion. Bearing in mind, when Jason wasn't in, ironically, I think a couple of months ago, Jason said we needed, 17 new players. I think that's now changed to 25. But it's even got that bad. Jamie's walked off. It's that many players. How many, Lee, do we actually need to sort that squad out?
I mean, it's a massive job, isn't it, for Antonio Conte? I think we all agree with that. Huge surgery needed. I've done a bit of, I like to look at different formations and how to put different pieces of puzzle together and all that sort of stuff. And I was just messing around on Sunday morning. I started posting it out on the WhatsApp group, didn't I? And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, well, we're crying out for a creative midfielder. And most people that I speak to and the fans that I interact with via the show will probably say the same thing. You know, we need a creative midfielder. We're really looking out for that. Yes, John. But when you look at the system that Antonio Conte is playing, is the number 10 obsolete? Is there a number 10 position now? When you look at Tunga and Dembele, Giovanni Lo Celso, Dele Alli, you could also potentially argue that Brian Hill was brought in to potentially play that side, that number 10 role potentially. You could also argue that Lucas Moura could essentially drop into the hole. So you've got maybe 4 or 5 different options. And then I'm not even throwing in Harry Kane into that scenario, who is actually probably the best number 10 that we could probably even buy in, let alone even have at the club, right? If you wanted to drop him back. But the point being is that if you're playing a 3-4-3, you don't play with a number 10. And Conte doesn't play. So I'm trying to work out whether or not Conte's going to change the system once January comes and he gets a player to fill that gap, or he's playing his system and he's trying to find the players to put in or work with the players that he's got. I couldn't find loads and loads of stats on Juventus and Inter Milan as easy as I could in the Premier League, right? So I've based this on Chelsea and what he did at Chelsea. And when you look at, he played a 3-4-3 at Chelsea that year, and they were absolutely relentless the year that they won the title via us. And he didn't play with a number 10. There was no number 10. So they might have moved around. Pedro, Eden Hazard, you could argue, didn't always stay out on the left. He'd come inside and so on and so forth. They had Diego Costa as their number 9. But between that front 3, there wasn't really a number 10 there. So when we talk about going out, we're going to go and buy a number 10 and all these lovely creative, do we actually need that? Or actually do we need a number 8? That's actually going to come in a proper number 8 that's going to create, that's going to run, that's going to do assists, that's going to score goals. Cesc Fabregas for that Chelsea team, 5 goals, 12 assists from a number 8 position. He was never a number 10, he was a number 8. Matic that year, alongside him, majority of the games, 35 games, 7 assists. Yeah, 1 goal, but 7 assists. And by the way, he scored an outrageous goal against us, didn't he, in the semi-final of the FA Cup? I think it was that season as well. So when you look at the team's makeup, you've got to, and that's why I was going into it on the centre-backs as well, because he's clearly going to play a back 3. He's clearly going to play 4 across that middle, essentially, with two wing-backs pushing high. And then he's got 3 in front of him. And if he's only playing a 3 in front, where does a number 10 fit? So when you look at Tunga Ndombele, a Giovanni Lo Celso, and a Dele Alli, out of them 3 players, who is best suited to sit in that number 8 and be a proper number 8? And is he going to just make do with that, or are we going to shift all 3 of them on and find a genuine number 8? And if we do find a genuine number 8, who drops, Højbjerg or Skip? Because you can't play both of them. I think you can rotate them, and that's what he did with Kante, with Matic, 2 holding midfield players. But do you see what I mean? So the makeup of the puzzle, if you like, that he's got to work out. The question is how much surgery needs to be happened. What's Conte going to do? That's what I'm going to get into the detail of what that squad is going to look like, because we're not only changing the players, we're not only changing the mentality, we're not only changing the manager again, we're fundamentally ripping up the 4-2-3-1 and changing the system completely. But when Pochettino was there, it was a 4-2-3-1. When Jose came, it was a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1 or sometimes a
9-1-1, wasn't it?
When Nuno came, it was a 4-3-3. Or do you see what I mean? So it's quite a big change of players. And actually, maybe we're only 1 or 2 players away, or maybe we're 8 players away. So that's my thoughts to start it off, really.
Yeah, we're going to come on to ads in a second. Jamie, I just want to come to you because obviously on this piece from Conte, he said, when asked what convinced him to join Spurs, he said, President Daniel Levy has shown that he wants me at all costs. In his words, in the investments made, I perceived a vision, the desire to excel. I said to myself, if we combine this ability off the pitch with what I can give on the pitch, we can really set up a serious, profound job, grow and compete with other big English clubs. Now, Lee sat there, as you've just heard, Jamie, talking about the fact that we're going to need to really rip up a lot of this squad, or potentially, or can Conte improve 7 to 8 of these players? Where I personally feel a lot of these players are done. That I feel, I feel you look at the level where they were under Pochettino, Nuno, Ryan Mason, Jose Mourinho. They couldn't get these players performing any better than what Pochettino did before he left. So, as great of a manager Conte is, which I do think he is, and as much as he improves players, I personally feel that there's nothing more to get out of some of these players, the likes of Winks, the likes of Dele and Davis and Sanchez, the guys I mentioned, of course. Do you feel, Jamie, that there is going to be real open surgery needed across the next couple of transfer windows with Conte being here?
Look, one thing that I was really pleased with actually after the Mura game was Conte's comments. I think he was very ruthless in kind of his assessment. A lot of them, I think he said that a lot of them were willing, that they wanted to work hard, but sometimes hard work isn't just enough. You need the talent as well. You need the ability. And I think he very much made it clear that he knows that this squad is missing a lot of that ability. So it's one thing that I just find so very difficult to kind of to fathom is that, you know, would Antonio Conte, with everything that he had going for him, he was a free agent. You know, he was just coming off the back of winning Inter Milan's first Scudetto title in 10 years, 11 years even. So he had so much going for him. So it was very difficult to see him in the position that he was in, taking this Spurs job, if he wasn't given real assurances. So that's why, for me, I'm confident that we will go and back him. But the key thing is going and getting those number one targets. As I said earlier, I think you look at the likes of Joe Rodon, he was an alternative. Steven Bergvine wasn't in the plans of Jose Mourinho. So that's got to be the big thing for me, is that we start going for these number one targets instead of wasting £11 million on Joe Rodon, who's never going to play, £23 million on Steven Bergvine and other players in this squad. You know, Lo Celso instead of Bruno Fernandes. So there's lots of examples where we've gone for these alternatives. So that's got to be the big thing in the next couple of windows, that we go and get these top targets for Conte. But as I said, I was very impressed by his comments. I think a lot of the time, some of the managers have maybe kind of hid their real feelings for this squad. But he kind of really made it very clear that there is going to be real surgery. And I'm very interested to see what we do in January. We need to really go. I think we need to start this rebuild. There's a lot to be done. So I'm interested to see how we get on in January. I think that we're in for 2 or 3 signings, I'd say, just in my opinion.
We'll go ask you to name some names later on, Jay. Don't worry about it. Jason will be on bated breath waiting for those. As it's come around to you, Conte in this interview said the team is young, there's a lot of room for improvement, but the competition is fierce with the 4 giants, Chelsea, City, Liverpool, United, and then Arsenal, West Ham, Everton. There's always been a sense that Conte's title-winning club spent heavily to realise his ambition, and it's a notion that makes him chuckle. It makes him laugh. He says, let me tell you something, in my career, in the end, I've always made money, not spent it. Now, it's quite interesting that, because I know in the past he's been referred to as a checkbook manager, but when you look at the players that he's had in the past, the likes of Victor Moses, Ashley Young, you know, he's actually gone and got the best out of these players and not necessarily spent big. Do you personally feel, Wads, and we're going to come on to the finances soon for Spurs, is the money there to really change, mould, shape this squad in the style of what Antonio Conte needs to do in order to be successful at Tottenham?
I think, I don't think he'd be here. And I don't think it's just Conte. I don't think Paratici would be here either. People just say Conte, but I don't think them together here, who effectively was so successful at Juventus, would both end up here, you know, and actually,
sorry, King, not many at this rate,
and actually put their reputation on the line. Clearly, he's going to improve some players. I think as a squad, we need major surgery. I think as a starting 11, you could get away with a couple of key positions, like Jamie's mentioned, 3 players. You know, if we bought in January that number 8 position, another one to play up front instead of Mora, and a centre back, then actually you'd be sitting there thinking, okay, all of a sudden that looks like quite a decent team. But after that, with the injuries, we're reverting back to the people that we've all spoken about that effectively need to move on. And Lee's 100% right. That number 10 role, I think, has been gone for a long time. I don't think, we haven't played it really under Pochettino. No. And I think...
Well, since the loss of Eriksen, really, since Eriksen's top form.
But Eriksen actually played off the left and Dele played at the 10.
That's fair. Yeah.
And if you look, I said at the time, I've said this a few times, Dele can only play one position, and forget the fact that he's been.
You're right, just off a Kane. That's the only position he can play.
Yeah, he can only play there, nowhere else. Yeah. He's completely ineffective. The only player, I got pelters for saying I still have some sort of element of hope in him. The only player that I think that could play number 8 would be Lo Celso, because he's played that bit of a deeper role, and when he has been fit, and I think when he did have that good run under us. Under Mourinho in lockdown, he had like a 6-game period where he was quite good. He played in that number 8 role and he put himself about and he did move. He would be the only one I think that could play there. I'm not saying he's necessarily the answer because he's always injured and stuff like that, but he's the only one there. For me, the most disappointing thing Wednesday, or Thursday, thankfully I didn't watch it, was the fact that some of these players we've spoken about, forget whether, this was their chance to play under a new manager.
An audition to impress.
It's like, and it's like, that's the bit that you're like, wow, they just didn't. And what does that tell you? Not about their ability, because we know Ndombele's got ability and Dele's. What does it tell you about their attitude and their desire and their mentality? What does it say?
Yeah.
And it says it all.
Yeah, no, that is massively alarming. Lee, to come back round to you, Conte in his interview said, I've often worked with young people to train depreciated athletes or to be rebuilt, players who've never won until then. He says, all players have reevaluated thanks to my work. In my career, I've only asked for one player who's been paid a lot, and that was Romelu Lukaku. He said, I asked it for based on the objectives that had been presented to me. He said, the executives came to his house to tell me that they wanted to overthrow Juventus and bring Inter to the top of the world, taking advantage of great financial resources. My only concern for me, Lee, and I know we've been here before with Spurs, and there's still a lot of players for you to get to and get through here, is whether Conte will go to that board in January and say, I want this exact player. And we've heard this story. I think he wanted Giroud. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think Giroud is the guy that he wanted at Inter. And I think Inter questioned, because the guy's age, whether that's a sensible signing. And when he didn't get who he wanted, quite frankly, he was out. My only worry is, again, we've seen it with Tottenham, whereas Jamie touched upon it earlier. We wanted Skriniar, we got Rodon, we've got likes of Joe Hart, Carlos Vinicius. My concern is that if we do not give Antonio Conte the wrong Fernandes, but if we don't give Antonio Conte exactly what he wants, this isn't going to work, is it? Let's be brutal about this.
No, it won't. Sorry, it's gone.
I was just thinking, if you listen to how he spoke after the Mura, after he spoke after the Mura game, he was very measured in what he said. Very measured. He took his time, but he didn't. He
knows what he was saying as well. When he said, "I want to stay," I mean, I know we were laughing, joking, but
he was almost implying that he's got complete control over what's going to happen. He said a few things, and you're like, okay, a bit more than we need to spend, or I want to do this. It was like, I know exactly what needs to happen here. I'm going to be going to the board, and it was almost like. So I do wonder whether, which the point was, whether he's come. I reckon he's got, and this could be famous last words, cast iron.
Yeah.
Cast iron, because there's nowhere for Levy to hide if he doesn't back this guy. Because Mourinho, you could hide behind, he's past it. Nuno was the gam, but there's nowhere to hide now. Nowhere to hide.
Do you agree with that, Lee, for you? Is there a case now where you feel Conte, who would be one of the very few managers under Levy's tenure, or probably only the one, to have complete control with Parategy when it comes to the exact players he wants to come into the football club, and will he get those?
Well, look, it won't be the first time and it won't be the last time that people might label me naive, but, call me naive if you want. But I agree with Adam. I cannot believe that Parategy will come to the football club, and then also Conte come to the football club, and then Levy turns around and says, I'm buying you a Joe Rodon instead of Skriniar. I can't fathom it. So for me, I agree. I think that he has got control. I think that they know that. And I think that, and to be fair I know people will hate me saying this, but to be fair to Daniel Levy, right, he has gone out and got a top 3 manager, top 5 manager in the world. Like, he appointed him. Like, he didn't bottle it. He didn't turn around and go, oh, actually, he might give me some grief, so I'm not going to. He did it, and he's our manager. So I think that he is going to back him as well. The bit that I think I'm going to caveat in that interview for a lot of fans, including definitely you, Rick, and Jamie on the transfers, is the bit where Antonio Conte, you just read it out, where he talks about, I develop depleted athletes and I am not a checkbook manager. Now, if that isn't a warning sign to all you transfer gurus out there, that he's not going to go out and splash like 300
Jamie Brown.
Yeah, exactly. Jamie Brown and Daddy Osper. Do you know what I mean? So I just think you've got to be a bit calm. But like I'd said, and like we've all said actually, in all the comments as well, I don't want to get. Well, I don't care if you'll embarrass me. It doesn't matter. I don't think we're as far away as from a first team as maybe what we think, if we can start to work some of his magic. I think the problem has always been for a long time, is the people that are comfortable not giving two hoots. And that is a squad players that are in and around. I mean, Tunga Ndombele, right? You can say what you like about him, and we all know that he's got talent, but we ain't seen it for 2.5 years.
Not consistently anyway.
Performance on last Thursday was embarrassing. Dele Alli, I'm one of your biggest fans, and I still think in the deep of my gut that you might come back. But I am telling you today, I am saying it for the first time. Everyone labels me like a love child of Dele or whatever. He's got to move on from the football club, right, for his own sanity and for his own sake. Even if it's on loan and do,
he's got to go, isn't he?
He's got to go. Like Rodon, same thing for me personally. Sanchez, it was embarrassing the other night. This is an NS Moura, and I have to be honest with you, I'm absolutely flabbergasted, but I'm not going to question him. I'm flabbergasted that he was in the starting lineup against Burnley. I have to be honest. I thought it was absolutely woeful. Doherty, just literally woeful. I mean, you can't even cross a football. And then Sessegnon, come on. This is a guy that was wheeled out. This is a guy that was wheeled out in the press conferences. He's a young player. He's finally got fit. We finally see him. We're all excited to see him, correct me if I'm wrong. And then he gets sent off within half an hour. And you just think, man alive, Bergvine we've already talked about. I mean, how many players is that? I mean, Lucas.
It's 7 or 8. It's 7 or 8 minimum there already. That's before you even. That's even before you even get into who's coming in to replace him, Lee.
I think what you can do is if you get out 3 of the really bad ones, or your 3 that you think, okay, we can get some money for and stuff like that, and you replace them with 3 maybe more experienced people that have won stuff that Conte or Paratici, then that rubs off, and then all of a sudden you've got Kane, Son, Lloris, a couple of new people that are sort of all more winners, and then you've got less motives. So you can then change the attitude of some of the other people as well. So it's not just you have to get rid of 20 of them. You probably just need the 3.
I was just going to say this. Look, this is exactly a point that I kind of made on our WhatsApp group as well. I think one thing that we've really seemed to have missed is having like a tight-knit group. And I think because we've got too many players of that football club that are too comfortable with where they're at. For me, of course, losing to Moura is embarrassing regardless, but it was just kind of the manner of the way we did it. You had players out there that had an opportunity to kind of establish themselves under one of the top 3 managers of the world, and none of them looked like they were willing to take that opportunity. So there's clearly so many players at that football club. I think even, as Jason said on the screen, for me, I wanted to see Ndombele do well at Spurs. I think there's the talented player in there, but he clearly showed that he doesn't have that desire, he doesn't have that the drive to succeed at Spurs, and that's something that we've got to change. I think that getting a tight-knit group, I think one thing that, I hate to give them credit, but one thing I think Arsenal did well, I think it was a couple of transfer windows ago, was got rid of a lot of the dead wood, a lot of those players that were kind of bad eggs in the dressing room, and they seem to have a bit of a
can't forget though, we also did.
We got rid of 13 players in the summer.
I must say,
13 players went out of the
we made a good start for sure, but now I think that's something that we've got to continue now. And I think one thing that was promising is, in the past, would we have paid up Aurier's contract? I think that's something that maybe Spurs would have continued to try and get a fee for. So to get him out the dressing room, if he wasn't maybe the right character to have around, or whether Spurs didn't like him, you accepted £5 million for Moussa Sissoko, of course, a player we spent £30 million on.
Yeah, even Alderweireld, I think, was Alderweireld 5 million.
He was a cheap fee as well. So we kind of looked to move on players that were not wanted by the manager, that were not wanted by Paratici. So that's obviously maybe a change from Spurs, but that needs to continue now. I think that's something that's so important. As getting in new players, we need to kind of reduce the size of this squad. So you've got 15 or so players that are all pulling in the same direction, because I think at the moment you've got too many players that are pulling in opposite directions. That performance against Moura, as I said, to lose is one thing, but then to have that kind of performance where players don't want it at all is completely where it becomes unacceptable. So that's something we need to really address in getting players out that are pulling in the same direction as us.
Do you think he learned Do you think he learned more in that defeat than he would have if we'd have gone and beaten them like 4-1 or something like that? Because for me, attitude, behaviour, the way you are, the way you went about it, running about. I mean, it was just literally Frank, one of our own, right? He always says about us, doesn't he, Rick and Jamie in the WhatsApp group and whatever. He always talks about, sprinting and running is the first rule of football. That's what you got to do. And it just didn't feel like that they wanted to do that.
The basics weren't there.
And as you said, this is like players that are not in the shop window, but they're meant to be impressing a new manager. Like, this is your opportunity. And Glenn Hoddle, obviously absolute legend, we love him, right? He says it every European night, because he does the BT Sport, doesn't he? If you don't go to the game, you watch it on BT Sport. Himself and Crouch and Jermaine Genius who do a fantastic. I love that, by the way, just as an aside. All three of them on there, I think it's great. It's all Tottenham, really. And he talks about every time we stop. I think we're going to be brilliant today. We're going to wipe floor. We're going to be fantastic. This is always the chance for everybody to, wear the shirt with pride. And then every time at half time or full time, he's having to go, I can't believe that. Can't believe it. Just every time in Europe, away from home. I mean, it's embarrassing. What's going on, Tottenham?
I think.
Go on, Adam. Go on.
Yeah, there were two other things that Conte said, which I think are actually where you asked, does he know? Did that defeat? He said it's been 3 weeks now, and I can see with my eyes. So I reckon he obviously came in, and obviously there's that immediate bounce and you just wonder whether everyone's come in the first week, they're all buzzing, giving absolutely everything, and all of a sudden there's might have noticed a few people that haven't played in
when they're not starting.
All of a sudden they're not training like they were in the. I bet that's part of it. The other thing he said, which was really interesting, was he said, I can't remember the exact words that he said, but it was something like, "You've got to want or respect or want to play for Spurs," and it was something along those lines. He said for Tottenham, and I think what's happened with some of these players is, if you take Dele as an example, I don't want to pick on him, but Dele came to Spurs as a young kid. He absolutely hit the heights. We went up him in the top four. He probably thought, this is great. I'm going to go on and maybe go on to pay for Barcelona because that's what he wanted to do in the future. So we were almost like a stepping stone. And then now what you've got is we're now 8th and he's not even in the team. So in his head, mentally, he was like, well, I'm better than Spurs. I'm better than this because I'm going to go on. Whereas now he's like, well, I'm getting paid a fortune. I'm not even getting in the team. I thought I was better than it. And it's like, you should. Yeah. It's like a complete.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Whereas Conte's talking about bringing in players that want to play to take you on.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Just quickly got on that point, because it's a fantastic point. Michael Dawson, friend of the show as well, Dawes, if you're watching, he said at the weekend on the Sky panel that he does, he actually said that there's not many places you can go now that are a bigger echelon or bigger club than Tottenham. Now that might be a lot of fun to our rival fans,
oppositions in this trolling chat.
Right? I know. But if you think about it, he's right in what he's saying, because yes, players leave and they go and win stuff, but actually, add to the point Adam was making before, their surroundings where they are, they're living in London, the wages that they're collecting, all of the stuff that they're doing. Now, where is Dele going to go? Sanchez going to go? Doherty going to go? Rodon going to go? Sessegnon going to go? They're not going to go to Barcelona or Real Madrid or Bayern Munich or Chelsea, Liverpool.
It's downwards, isn't it? It's downwards from here.
They're going lower than where Tottenham, not necessarily just in the league, but Tottenham as a stature of the club. Whether or not you like it or not, ESL, and it's in a whole new ball game, but we were going in the ESL, right? That is where we were trying to go. These other clubs weren't going in there. So, if Dele's sitting there thinking to himself, I'm better than Tottenham, is he going to go and play for Newcastle? Is he going to play for Leicester? Or go and play for Aston Villa? But with the greatest respect to these other clubs, where we are right now, we are in a different. We are still fighting for the top table, and on the pitch we're off it, but everything else we're on it, and that's why it's difficult to move these players on when we need to move them on. I mean,
it's also the wages and the money. It's the wages and salary as well that you've got to deal with, right?
Location also is a massive thing. I mean, I know people laugh when we say this, but being in London, obviously the training ground, the stadium, some of the players. I mean, there's a lot of factors. There is. I do want to bring Jay in before I do. On the screen there, Gov, in response to Lee earlier, he said it's okay, Lee, to give props for getting Paratici and Conte. This is a time to be hopeful and positive about the current situation. COYS there from Gov. What I'll ask you, Jay, is Conte said in his interview that challenges have never scared me. It's enough for me to only have 1% chance of winning them to start my battle. I've never taken a team that had won the year before, but always reconstruction paths. Juve came from 8th place, Chelsea from 10th place, Inter from a quarter. I know it will take a little patience this time. In Milan, I left a finished job. Here, I have to start over and enter the current season is never easy. He also goes on to say, great teams are built over time. Klopp did not enter the Champions League in the early years of Liverpool, but they gave him confidence year after year, and he shaped the team and won it. Guardiola didn't win the first year either. We are starting from A, B, C, but on the way we plan to accelerate with the letters of the alphabet. The path is bumpy, but it doesn't scare me. It excites me. Now, how can you not be excited when you hear that? Do you think, Jay, in a way that these last 3 or 4 weeks, would Conte's opinion have changed on the job based on working with these players?
I think Lee made the point as well, is that, yes, obviously we lost that game, but maybe it might have been an opportunity for Conte to have learned a lot from this team. I think, a lot of people, sometimes people say you can learn a lot more from a loss than you can from a win. So we saw during his tenure at Chelsea, he obviously very early on, I think Lee, you also tweeted this, was when he lost to Arsenal earlier on in the season. He then changed he learned a lot about his team, changed the system, and they went on to win the league that year. So he's shown that he's obviously got that ability to kind of identify tactical tweaks that he needs to make to teams. He knows kind of, he can learn from those sort of poor results. So, for me as well, I think his comments were totally spot on in terms of when he's taken over sides, they've been really struggling. As he said, he listed them there. Of course, Juve, the season before, he joined them. They'd finished back-to-back 7th place. The year after he comes in, they're league champions. Inter Milan hadn't won a league title in 11 years. The year he takes them over, the year after he'd taken them over, they become Italian champions. Chelsea, 10th place, champions the following season. Italy, a really uninspiring Italian side, and he took them to the quarterfinals of the Euros. A really, really, as I said, really uninspiring team there. So he's shown he's got that ability. You look at those top teams, again, as you said, with Jurgen Klopp, I remember them celebrating a late win over Norwich, and I think early on in Klopp's reign, and that first season there was a lot of question marks over was he the right man for Liverpool. So it took them at least a season to get it right. Pep Guardiola's side, I remember beating them earlier on in his reign at Man City, and they took a while to get going. So it's certainly not going to be kind of something where we're going to become an amazing team. Of course, there was such a high after Conte came in. And we're all expecting quick results, but it's, the reality is we're at a stage where we do need to rebuild this team. It's going to take time for Conte to come in and kind of implement his style of play, implement his everything that he does off the pitch. We've seen all these behind the scene changes, so it's going to take a long time for Conte to really get going. But as we've seen, he's really had that ability to come into teams that are struggling and change them. So it's all about patience. I think one thing that was really frustrating for me this season when we were under Nuno is that Spurs were putting it down to the transitional season. But, we didn't see where we were going. Even transitioning, we looked like we were transitioning backwards. But now I can kind of accept this season as being a transitional season, because now we've got the right manager in place. We've got our first choice manager in place. We've got a manager who we know where we're looking to build now. He's got a definitive style of play. So, this year potentially will be a tough season for Spurs, but I think long term, I'm really excited for what Conte will do, and it's going to take time for him to, as I said, implement the style of play, getting the right players. So for me, it's all about being patient, I think, this season for sure.
Yeah, that's spot on, Jay. Honestly, the words you said there, it's very hard to disagree with any of what you said there. Conte said on his relationship with Fabio that it's solid. There's a great mutual esteem. They've worked together. He knows me. We speak the same language. I'm not just referring to Italian. So, like I say, we talk about how important that relationship will be. I always knew this segment was going to overrun, but we are going to go for our next break of the show. We are going to, in the next 15 to 20 minutes, touch upon Spurs' latest financial figures, which came out over the last week or so. We're trying to squeeze it in, and also do a quick 5 minutes on Brentford as well to come on Thursday night, where Spurs are back in action. So for our listeners on audio, we are going to go for a very quick break. For our watching audience on YouTube, I know we're touching around nearly 600 of you watching us live. Thank you always. And like I say, during a non-match day, to get those kind of figures is quite incredible. Thank you so much as always for your incredible support. Lots of love out there to you all. Right. Okay, guys, we're going to, like I say, touch upon very quickly Spurs' financial accounts. Joe, Ads, we'll start with you. I was going to say this later in the show, but you have won a trophy sooner than Tottenham in the last 20 years. Obviously, this is your bag, right? So we're going to discuss it with you. We'll come on a bit later on about that award and how it came about. But Daniel Levy's new salary revealed that for Tottenham's latest accounts, the club shows there's a debt, I understand, of 853 million. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that. But that's the North London's latest financial results. And it looks alarming on first glance, but it does show Spurs are in a stable position once all the revenue streams are normalised post the pandemic. Spurs' net debt had climbed from 706 million, with the club's latest financial results indicating they made a pre-tax loss of more than 80 million between July 2020 and June 2021. Ads, just looking at it from a brief, not going into too much depth. Was there much concern on the eye looking at that for you?
No, I actually thought it was okay. I mean, if you think about it, right, we are always used to Spurs making a profit.
We are
not used to it, but
under ENIC we are.
Yeah, they're net spenders. They've always actually been one of the clubs that have made quite a lot of profit. And if you look at some of the other bigger clubs, I think Chelsea make a bigger loss consistently for us over the long term, and the debt is obviously not ideal, but ultimately it's the same as anybody when you buy a house and you've got a mortgage. Yeah. If you can service the debt, it doesn't really matter. And if you increase the revenue to a much greater level through football, playing, commercial, and all the other constants of stuff that you're doing, then, it is what it is. Then you've got more to spend. So it's not overly concerning. I was actually pleasantly surprised that the loss was not as big as I expected. And I think you look at Chelsea, you look at Man City, they post much bigger losses than us, and it's likely next season it will be flipped round. What I didn't know is, just one more, is whether that increase in debt, they took on that government loan, didn't they? The recovery loan, which was like 100 million. So I don't know whether that was, and they've paid it back now, but it might have been published in those set of financial accounts. So it might have even been included in that for the period in which it was paid.
I'm just looking through here. So they say Spurs' absence of match day income falling from 94.5 million to 1.9 owing to the coronavirus pandemic. Obviously, the UEFA prize money as well being more than halved on the account of not qualifying for the Champions League. I mean, that's another thing. You think of Spurs being out of the Champions League for what is it, 3-4 seasons now? I care to try and not remember it. It feels like it's been that long now, and how we've consequently gone from Champions League to Europa League, to Europa Conference League. I still can't accept that even being a competition. And then you look at the fact that commercial revenue falling from 161.5 million to 152, partially on account of last year's NFL games being cancelled, of course, due to COVID. And then the broadcasting revenue, that increased on the account of last season running into the beginning of these financial results, leading to the overall revenue falling to 361.9 million from 402.4. Lee, on the eye again, you read some of this, there does seem some big losses in there. And although, again, maybe argue because of COVID and obviously what's happened in the world the last 2 or 3 years, this was always going to be the case. Is there any concern for you being a businessman looking at the way Spurs are being run at the moment financially?
There's always a concern when you talk about me being a businessman, Rick. I
just want to be polite there.
No, I know you were. I know. No. Look, jokes aside, I agree. I mean, this is not my domain from a financial perspective, more adds to me. But I looked at them figures, and what stood out for me is last year's revenue through the ground versus this year's revenue, and that for me was the killer. I think we made, what did you say? We made a loss of 80 odd million. But actually, we had a drop in revenue of 90 million just from
gate receipts low, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was that? Oh, sorry. There was something going on in the background. Sorry. Forgive me, listeners. You don't have a clue what happened there. Something flashed up. It was so 91 million before COVID, and then 1.9 million just coming through as gate receipts and through the club during the COVID period. So when you look at that, and like I'd said, I know only losing 80 million seems an absolute ridiculous statement to say, oh, it was only 80 million. But you can really ring fence it and say that was really down to lack of everybody coming through the new stadium. And what's actually from a positive perspective is if that's how much can drop off in one season, now we've got AJ fighting there and Lady Gaga's and all the things that we talked about with the great Kieran Maguire as well a couple of weeks ago. that revenue is just going to go up. So if you look at it from a positive perspective, next year's accounts is really going to be a much better read than what these year accounts were. And I think everybody did, as I'd said, right, everyone expected a loss because of COVID. And when all the other clubs, I think the only other club that's released their results, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was Manchester United, and I think there was only 6 months results as well. When all these other clubs start looking at the results, and you put our results together with everyone else's, they won't look as bad either. So I was actually pleasantly surprised. Now, whether that means that we're going to go out and spend 300 million in January, probably not, right? But it's the club is in a very, very good position financially. I think they've put all of their loans in I think Kieran said they're interest only. Most of their loans now are not payable until 2051. So they've got long terms. Like I'd said, it's like having a mortgage, right, at the end of the day. So, when you look at things like that, and hopefully if we can get rid of a lot of these players that are still on my list that we need to read out and get some transfer fees for them and save on the wages, then we could be in a better position next year.
Yeah, my only concern is, though, if he looks at all of our list of players going out, I mean, we're about 4 players trading at this rate. Just be the under 18s and just Højbjerg. Yeah, well, Højbjerg, even he's getting criticised. Poor bloke's text on his Twitter account has got that bad.
I think it's important as well. Kieran mentioned this about Chelsea, and as you just mentioned Chelsea as well, right? Is it Christian Perslow that used to be their CEO, the managing director? Now over at Villa, right?
Was it Liverpool? Villa. Was it Liverpool now at Villa? Yeah.
Yeah, now he's at Villa. I think when they started their academy process, and they sell more players than most other people, and they're not a selling club. And Kieran mentioned this before, but actually their selling of players through their academy actually generates some serious revenue. It's actually it's a masterstroke in a sense of how they're actually funding their players and so on and so forth. Now, they have got a sugar daddy in Roman Abramovich, and we know that. But actually, Chelsea now, with all the revenue they've got, they're European Cup holders or Champions League winners, and they hold that current position. They're probably generating revenues of 50, 60, 70 million just going through a season in Champions League. It's hugely important to be able to have not just one aspect of the club. And for us, we need to learn how to. We learned how to keep our best players, and that was a really. When was this, guy? Probably 4 or 5 years ago. We learned how to keep our best players, to sign our best players up to long-term contracts. What's quite interesting about that is now when you look at it in hindsight, you go, "Oh, Dele Alli's on a long-term contract. Oh, we can't get rid of him because he's on, whatever he's on, and he's on a long-term contract." But at the time, Dele Alli was, in games unplayable. So you want him signed up until 2024. Do you see what I mean? So we learned to keep hold of our best players and not be a selling club of our best players. Now we need to learn when to sell them and sell them quickly if you don't need them in the football club. And I know it sounds horrendous because players are human, but, in football, they are essentially a commodity, right? So you should be able to try and move them on quickly. Hire slow and fire fast is what we would say in business.
Yep, no, that's fair. Just Daniel Levy reflecting on the results. He said the results published for our year ending 30th of June 2021 reflect the challenging period of the pandemic and the incredibly damaging timing of COVID-19 coinciding as it did with the opening of our stadium in April 2019. He said, with no less than 3 lockdowns, our operations severely disrupted, albeit this was a secondary to the impact everyone felt in their personal and family lives. He said all this together kept for Spurs, it was, as you know, a difficult situation. He went on to thank the sponsors, Nike and AIA, for their continued backing. He said global uncertainties remain, and the club is not alone in facing significant cost pressures resulting from the impact of the pandemic on supply chain constraints and consequences of Brexit. Resilience is, however, a hallmark of everyone at the club. And the standout from Tottenham's financial results up until the end of the June this year is the club's net depth. In a year, it's risen to an eye-watering now 706 million, up from 605 million the previous summer, with their pre-tax losses across those 2 years hitting 150 million. So whilst we're all very excited, I know Jamie's face is thinking, hold on, does that mean no transfers? When we are getting very excited about January and summer to come under Conte, again, I do think it's maybe an urge for a little bit of caution. I might be wrong. I don't know. I mean, it says here, for Levy, he says in the company letter, sustainability is the key word in football. And I just wonder, again, I must laugh. I don't think you can hear it in my background. That is my son's toy going off by itself. There is no off button on this toy, so I want to apologise if you can hear that. It's we bought it for him recently.
What's
Lee, I
the
think
toy, Rick?
We used to have those. I used to hate all of those when they said
Do you know what? This thing has this thing hasn't got an off button either. Well, I do apologise for that. God,
I can't actually hear it, Ricky. So
you can't hear it. Okay, fantastic. But what Daniel Levy did say is that Jay, coming around to you, is improved recruitment is one of the most important things that the club must focus on. And at least we know that Daniel Levy understands what we've been rabbiting on about on this podcast for the best part of 2.5 years, 3 years about improvement in recruitment. Jamie?
Yeah. Well, I think that's the one thing you hope that bringing in a sporting director like Fabio Paratici is kind of maybe a change from Daniel Levy. He's recognised that we need to go and adapt the way that we recruit new players in. Of course, we had the report from Alistair Gold as well, with Paratici trying to kind of set up our scouting network to kind of be on level with the top clubs. So. It's something that certainly needed to change. We said throughout the show we've got too many players here. We got too many players here who weren't first choices and who have been real disappointments to have spent the money that we did on the Celso and Dombele and Ryan Sessegnon and the likes.
I'm going to say to Jamie, to Jason, you are going to hear Jamie's transfer hit list later on. I promise you.
Yeah, I was still thinking that we're going to go and sign the Vrij in January, but maybe you might have to be a bit more cautious. But no, I think it's totally right. We do need to kind of change the way that we've recruited these players. So, I mean, look again, just on the finances though. I think Daniel Levy's I think someone in the comments did make the point, Daniel, I think it was Peter Simmons that said, he's the one, Daniel Levy's probably the one guy that you'd want in this situation to kind of get his way around these debts. And you think with all the, with COVID somewhat being over and we've got somewhat of normality with all these events going on, you think that the club will kind of factor that in. Again, we said, would Conte have come if he wasn't given those kind of promises that he'd have to go and adjust the squad and make those changes that he wants. So let's see what happens. But from what I've been reporting, we're going to go and sign 5 new players in January, and we're going to spend.
But you've got to remember as well that it's not really the transfer fee that causes the problem. I mean, you can go and put Dusan Vlahovic. Oh God, why? That was done well. Done it. Ben Dusan, right? He's on 18 months left of his contract.
All this effort for him to go and join somebody else. We have to get this guy's name right.
Yeah, I know, bless him. But okay, I've got to call him Dusan, so I just murdered their names. But Dusan comes in up top as a number 9, absolute fantastic player. Go and get him 65 million, 70 million, 50 million, whatever it is. That's not necessarily the problem, right? The problem will be actually adding his wages, right? And this is one of the reasons why we go for, and Tottenham have improved this, and bringing you in, because you'll know this much better than I do, right? But Tottenham have improved their wage structure exponentially over the last 3-4 years as well, okay? So they are starting to compete on that. And part of the issue about getting the players out is because they're on bloody good wages, as you said earlier. So, they're on a contract for the next 3 years on under 50 grand a week. Why are they going to leave? Because they ain't getting it anywhere else. They ain't going to Wolves and getting under 50 grand a week, for example. But so bringing in Dusan and bringing in younger players like Brian Hill, you can guarantee that he ain't on more than 60, 70 grand. He ain't going to come and join Tottenham at that age on 100 grand a week. It's not going to happen. So, you look at the likes of Moussa Sissoko and so on and so forth. When they was at the football club, 90 grand a week. I'm not saying that's cheap. That's horrendously expensive, right, in the normal world. But in the football world, at the top table, that's relatively cheap. But that's the problem with the transfers. Not necessarily the actual transfer fee, because they're paid over 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever. You can capex essentially the payments. It's the wages that come onto your wage bill. So when people say we need to get rid of players before we can buy, it's not because we can't afford the transfer fees. It's because we can't afford the wage bill that goes with everybody being on the wage bill. Is there anything to add on that?
Well, yeah, you're right. And I think if you look at Spurs, we spoke about it. I think last time we said, like, what player, I can't think of one in this squad, have they bought who was an existing top level established footballer You could possibly say
Alderweireld.
Romero.
Oh, maybe it'll be Romero.
Yeah, but Alderweireld had been on loan at Southampton.
Yeah, it was 11 million.
Relatively modest.
Yeah.
You know, buying from Holland, you can always get good players, relatively cheap transfer.
That's fair.
And their wages are really low. The average wage in Holland is like a million quid a year. So you can pay somebody 2 million quid a year, and you're doubling their money. So actually, you get really good value there. But what I'm saying is, like, and I know we're not going to ever do what Chelsea do, and you can argue whether they've been hits or not. But if you take Werner, who was unreal at Leipzig and everyone wanted him, they went bang 30 million, bang 300 in. You look at Liverpool, Van Dijk, 75 million, 108, and Gate, boom, at that level. We never quite do that. And Lee's point is right. If you look at, let's take Ndombele, he costs 60 million. You know, that might be paid over 4 years. So it's 15 million a year over 4 years. And he's paid 10 million quid a year. If he's got 3 years left on his contract, no one's going to give him 200 grand a week. So if somebody's got to give him, let's say the best he can get is 100 grand a week, Spurs are going to have to pay him, 20 million to go, 15 million as a lump sum to go, and probably sell him for 30, 35 million. So the impact loss of getting rid of a player is actually quite high.
Yep.
It's not just, just get him out the door, because it's not taking a cut on the transfer, it's the wages as well, which is why you see some players just sit it out.
Like Ozil. I mean, I know there are rivals from South London, but Ozil was a prime example. Right? Arsenal had a very, very similar situation. They built it, like, to be fair, they won loads of trophies, they won doubles, makes you feel sick. But then they built their stadium, and in 2006, they had a barren period of transfers and so on and so forth. When they decided to change their wage structure and then put their wages, and they were big enough at the time anyway, but then really go for it. I mean, what was that Ozil on? 350 grand a week, right? Ozil was on 350 grand a week. When you look at that, and you couldn't get him out, because no one, as you just said, Ad, right? No one's paying 350 grand a week for Ozil. So he has to sit it out. And that has a massive effect on what you can then go and do in the transfer market and in the transfer windows, because it's not only the transfer fee, it's also the wages that are coming on. A player that's going to play in Ozil's position.
And Dele's that prime example, right? We bought Dele for 5 million quid, and at one point people thought he was maybe a 75, 100 million pound player. And now you're sitting there thinking, what are we going to do? Where, what are you going to get for Dele? 10, 15 million or lob him out on loan? You could lob him out on loan. It gets the wages off the bill in the short term, but it doesn't necessarily solve a long-term problem. And actually, if you loan somebody out, it's fine if they've got a long-term contract. If Dele's got 2 years left and you loan him out for a season, he'll come back and just see it out and go on a free. So then you're sort of stuck with him for another year as well.
Which is what Danny Rose did, to be fair. I mean, it's slightly different circumstances. He did, though, didn't he?
Yeah.
Went out to Newcastle, come back, set his contract out, and then and off he trotted. And I do think the COVID thing has impacted those things as well.
Massively,
right? COVID's affected. Firstly, it's affected all the English clubs, but secondly, it's where you can trade. Because Spain have got no money, France have got no money, Italy have got, so you can't sell these players anywhere.
No.
And England play the most wages anyway. So it's like, where are they going to go? Who's going to pay for them? What are you going to do?
I think we saw as well in the summer, Spurs were very keen to see if they could offload players to the Middle East. I mean, it's a fact, right? As we know. I mean,
it's why Auria's deal just got chomped, right?
Yeah.
Because we were shipping them around. Nobody would pay it. So in the end, they just said, right, do you know what?
Yeah.
Let's just cut this. You can go.
Yeah.
You can get a move somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's why Toby went to Qatar, because he got on big wages.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Keith Branner makes Keith Branner makes a really good point actually on the screen. Back in the 60s, Spurs signed established, fully formed players. I think that's what we're all talking about at the moment as well. The likes of Greaves, Gilzine, Mackay, Dave Mackay, Big Dave Mackay. These players were established. People wanted to come. Anyone that's watched that Jimmy Greaves interview, why he came to Tottenham back when he signed, fantastic piece. He's like, Tottenham are one of the greatest clubs in Europe. I want to come and sign for them. I want to come play with them, and that's where we need to get to. We want to be able to attract them top players. I think we have the infrastructure and also the money, to be honest, to attract players.
And the manager.
Do we have the winning mentality to attract them players? And it's all very well us going after their number one targets. But let me tell you something for free, everybody. If Man City come in for Dusan Vlahovic, we're done, right? He ain't coming to Tottenham. So you have to factor that in. And when Pochettino said all them years ago, Tottenham have to do things differently, that's what he's talking about. He's talking about them sorts of things. When Conte says, I'm not a checkbook manager, I get the best out of athletes and come to Tottenham, he does things differently, he gets better. That's why we have to do things slightly different. So let's not be deluded that we can go out and just buy all these mega-star world-class players in the position that we're in the cup competitions we're in, with the financial situation that we're in. All of that has an impact. But I don't think we're as far off as potentially we have been.
Yeah, I also think it's a bit of a myth where everyone says you have to spend massive money. If you look at Mane and Salah, I know it was a few years ago.
They were relatively decent. It was relatively
Chelsea. Like you look at, I know Werner hasn't been great, but he was unbelievable, and I think he was 30 million. Yeah. Ziyech didn't cost too much. There's not. You don't have to always spend 100 million on a player. And if you look at Lukaku, sorry, fine, but if you look at Lukaku, he was 100 million. But they shipped out Tammy Abraham and Giroud, so they only paid 50 million for him. Yeah, and probably their wages
as well. Tomori for 30 as well.
Out. Yeah, sorry.
Tomori as well for 30 million.
Yeah, so Lukaku, they're probably financially in a better position on wages and transfer fees. Do you want to bring Jamie in, because me and
I am. I want to come over to Jay. Joe, I wanted to come over to you, Jay, only because we saw just obviously what was obviously also part of the statement Daniel Levy said about Spurs' financial accounts was he wanted to discuss what was actually happening on the pitch, and he said there's been a clear demonstration of our intent and ambition by the fact of both Conte and Paratici coming through the door. And he said it's far from ideal to make changes to coaching staff. However, we have acted swiftly and decisively when we felt it was necessary, always looking to act in the best interest of the club. That was the way he finished that statement. He obviously went on to say that we extend a warm welcome to Fabio, to Antonio Conte, and they'd like to see Ryan Mason join the team, and again went on to say it's part of the ambition of the club, and went on to thank the women of how they're looking then to develop also the training ground for, of course, the women's side of the game, which obviously we're great fans of over here on Last Word on Spurs. Jay, do you genuinely believe now with what Levy has said there, Conte, Paratici coming in, when he discusses them in these financial statements, that there is now a clear desire, ambition to win? Do you believe that?
Yeah, for sure. I think when you bring it up, for me, firstly, Fabio Paratici was a sign that Spurs were willing to change. I think it was kind of Levy maybe giving a bit more power to someone else. So I think that was a good sign. Of course, we made a good, as I said, we did look as though we made somewhat of a good start in the summer in terms of looking to rebuild the team. Maybe some of the signings haven't quite come off yet, but I think in terms of the outgoings, that was good as well to see that sort of change in terms of letting players go for smaller fees, as I said earlier, paying off Aurier. So that was a nice change to see. And then, of course, we've gone and got Antonio Conte. And that for me, really says a lot about, will we want to really push on now? We've made it very clear that we know that Antonio Conte would not come to Spurs if he was not given those reassurances. So I'm confident that we will go and back him now. I think one of the guys made the point earlier, there's nowhere now for Daniel Levy and the club to hide. They've got one of the top 3 managers in the world. I think as well, for me personally, I think that I can't believe our luck that we've managed to get in Antonio Conte. So if he was the fact that Antonio Conte wanted to come to our football club, I think it's just incredible. So if he was to mess this up, it would be a huge disappointment. But as I said, I don't think he will, because he knows that he can't mess this up. He knows there's nowhere to hide. So I'm confident that we've seen the changes. We've seen enough changes from Daniel Levy now that we might start really trying to kick on. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. Go ahead. Do you want to come very quickly?
I was just going to say, like, on that nowhere to hide bit. The reason why I think there's nowhere to hide is because when people say, Levy over the years has always done that, but it's a different ball game now with the stadium, because you're charging so much money for the tickets. So if it doesn't work with Conte and Conte walks out on us because we don't have the ambition, then frankly, as fans, we're finished. What's the point? No one's going to spend 70 quid a game, because you're just thinking there's literally no point. because we don't have the ambition. Sorry.
Totally agree. No,
I totally agree. Just quickly on Conte as well. Sorry, this is absolutely fascinating. I literally love it. It's one of my favourite shows I've done for ages, right? When you look at the managers that were, it took, was it Rick 72 days? It should be embedded in my mind. 72 days to hire Santo. But all of the managers that we were linked with, right? If you look at all the managers, Nagelsmann very heavily linked with at the beginning. Pochettino coming back very heavily.
Are we going from the start or to the end?
Brendan Rodgers very heavily linked with. Obviously, Antonio Conte very heavily linked with, etc. Ralph Rangnick very, very heavily linked with. Do you not think that it's weird that we talk about Tottenham in such a kind of a low ebb sometimes, but actually Manchester United, one of the greatest teams that have ever graced our land, and if you watch obviously Sky, then they'll always tell you that that's the case as well. The same shortlist of managers was the same that Tottenham were going after. Now, I appreciate Nuno Espirito Santo wasn't on the United wish list, right? But they were going after exactly the same names. Brendan Rodgers, they were going after Pochettino, they would have clearly been going after Antonio. And that's where I'm saying, like, from a pride perspective, or being proud to be Tottenham Hotspur fan, because we are trying to compete and to be up at that level. Does that make sense, everyone? Thanks, Mark. So I just feel that it's quite interesting that he's gone there now as an interim manager, and yet we've managed to get Conte, and we are trying to be at that top table. You've got to give us not the ball.
Then you look at what United. You look at what United have spent, though. You look at the. When you said before about wages and transfer fees, and you look at, they're like different level.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point.
It's a small pool for top managers.
Yeah, John requesting this panel every week. We'll see what we can do. I say top. It has been a top panel. Nathan asked me, what do I think of Harry Kane's worth? Well, if you see today's Ballon d'Or, as we saw, 23 in the list for a guy that I still find that staggering. Playmaker of the season last season in the Premier League. Jamie, very quickly on this, top goal scorer, top assist maker, 23rd in that list. Does that boggle your mind as to how? Forget what happened in the summer with Kane and what we're going through right now in the lack of goals. Does that make any sense to you?
People are so quick to forget what Harry Kane's already done this year. I mean, as you said, to see the awards that he won in terms of getting the most goals last season, getting the most assists. As an individual, I think he was fantastic at the start of the year. Yes, of course, maybe he had a slightly disappointing Euros and he's had a tough start to the year, but I think 24th, I think that was very unfair on him. And Benzema, he's not won anything, which a lot of people are kind of banging on about. Okay, maybe he's got. Okay, I think
Kane hasn't won anything. Kane hasn't won anything either.
But no. That's the thing as well. Obviously, people beating Kane with that stick. He's not won anything. But Benzema, he hasn't won anything with Real Madrid this year. He finished second in the Liga top scorer last year, and he finished well up the list. So for me, Harry Kane, I think it's very unfair that he's kind of.
When was the last time? When was the last time the Ballon d'Or was won by a Premier League player? I have no clue.
Michael Owen.
Michael Owen. When would that have been? Like what? 2006, something like that. Before that, 15 years ago. So when you go on,
sorry, mate.
Jamie trying to figure it out for us.
I was going to say, like when you look at the Premier League being the most influential or the best league in the world and all that sort of stuff, there's some other areas of the world in football terms that don't look at it in that way. And you have to be in one of the world famous clubs. I mean, Manchester United. When was the last time, or Liverpool, and it was Michael Owen? That's a long time ago for a Premier League player. Look at the quality that we've got in the Premier League. How many Champions Leagues, for example, has a British club won since Michael Owen won the Ballon d'Or? There's got to be more. I mean, I'm trying to say.
No, you're right. But I might be wrong.
For Madrid, but there's something not right there.
I just think when you look at those lists, right? If you take, everyone's got rose-tinted glasses on, right? But Kane was unreal for Spurs. But if you look at all the players on that list in the top 10, Benzema, I actually agree with you. He was the only one in the top 10. I'd have had all of those top 10 ahead of Kane. Apart from they've all won the Euros, they've won Champions League, they've won leagues, and they've all been the best in those teams. Kane's been great in an average team. You're never going to get a Ballon d'Or. The keeper who's at PSG now, the Italian keeper, he's in there. He won the Euros. You know, they're Benzema's been doing it in the Champions League. Kane hasn't been in the Champions League for 2 years. It's all of those things that get you. You know, he's never going to get in there ahead of Lewandowski because Lewandowski scored 1 million goals and in the Champions League 1 million goals. So it's all great, but when they look at it, they were like, "Well, Harry Kane scored 22 goals for Spurs, who finished 7th."
Yeah,
so it's that's the
it's true. It's true.
Maybe Johnny's right.
Eurovision Song Contest.
Maybe it is like the Eurovision Song Contest. At which point, I think I've got a concern about a couple of years to come on that. But guys, we are going to go for our final break of the show for our listeners on audio. Taking this break, you're going to hear from a couple of Brentford podcasters that have taken their time out to give us their thoughts ahead of the game to come on Thursday. We've got Bees TV and we've got Besotted Bees giving us their thoughts. And like I say, we're going to do a quick 5 on this right now. For our watching audience on YouTube, still 500 of you plugging along watching us live. Thank you so much, like I say, for a non-game day. Lots of love in the comments. Some crazy comments tonight, I've got to say on the whole, but some lovely love out there as always. Never a dull moment on the last one on Spurs. Some great comments to come. There was a comment that came in earlier. When's the Christmas hats coming? We have got a big Christmas show that we're bringing you. Like I say, just before Christmas, it will be. The hats are coming.
We need to find one that actually goes over the barnet that don't ruin the booth on.
We're going to, like I say, poor Jamie had about 4 tabs open there trying to find who the Ballon d'Or was. He's now had to close them because we're now starting a different subject. Poor Jamie, on the technical here. We're not going there again, are we? Jesus Christ. We'll come on to that. Like I say, we'll come on to that shortly. But listen, let's close the show, guys, with Brentford to come. Ray, to answer your question, what's on your Christmas list? We'll close the show on that, Ray. I promise you we will come back to that in a second. I say Lee's the GOAT. Listen, Lee's the GOAT. There you go. Here first from THFC 17. Right. Brentford will go into this meeting, obviously, following a 1-0 win against Everton, who, to be fair, at the moment with Everton, they are taking, a battering wherever they go under Benitez. I think, I'd say, under increasing pressure. And I think, I'd say, Brentford, as Jason says there, were absolutely appalling on Sunday. I've got to agree with Jason, probably the worst I've seen them.
I agree with Jason.
In that game, Brentford had 40% possession, 6 attempts on goal with 4 on target, and the scorer of Brentford's goal was Ivan Toney. Everton got 14 shots off on that game with 5 of them on target. I mean, Jay, to start with you on this one, Brentford have amassed a total of 9 goals this season. Surely, if we're going to start a winning run under Antonio Conte,
ain't only 2 less than us. Like, let's be honest. Is it about 2 or 3 less than us?
Nil-nil then. Is it 0-0? It's 0-0, right?
Was it 4-1 to Brentford?
The lowest attempts on goal in a Premier League game.
Jamie, what do you think going into this game? What's your thoughts on a Brentford team coming up against a Spurs team? Both in and out of sorts. Obviously, Spurs did beat Leeds, obviously, of course, recently in the Premier League.
Oh, I think that's the thing. You look at that Leeds performance, and they were a Leeds side that were already depleted. They're a side that are sat in 17th place, and we did struggle against them. So maybe there is a bit of concern. We did see a reaction, though, in that second half. So maybe Conte he's shown that he can get his message across when he wants to. I was hoping maybe we'd see a reaction against Burnley. I think that game was so bad that maybe Conte might have been able to get some sort of message across, even though I was glad it was cancelled just due to conditions. It will be definitely interesting to see that game. As we said, Brentford have been very poor recently. I think they have that Everton game. Jason was right; they were really poor. As you read out the stats, they were low in possession, low amount of shots. So. I think it's still going to be a very tough game. I'm really not confident of kind of where we are as a team right now. So, for me, I do still think we'll win it, but it's definitely going to still be a close affair. And I think we will be in for maybe a slightly frustrating evening, but let's see.
As this come around to you, Lee was joking there about the goals they've scored. In their previous half a dozen outings, they've amassed a total of 9 goals. They've also managed to score on one of each of those occasions. During that period, they've had 11 goals go against them. We'll have to see whether that or not trend will be continued here, because coming into this fixture, Brentford are without an away win for the past 2 league games. I promise you guys, I'm not trying to put the knockers on this whatsoever. Do you think as we will go on a run between now and Christmas under Conte and start to now see some wins string together?
Yes.
It's brave.
Yeah. I think, as I said at the beginning, I think maybe not playing. I think he was probably absolutely fuming after the Mura game, and I reckon the players know exactly where they're at extra days preparation. I reckon he's going to really got a lot of time to prepare for this game. I'm they're at home. It's going to be the atmosphere will be good at the start. And also I think Brentford, these types of games where they're sort of high tempo and they'll be quite open might maybe suit us as well. So Brentford win 1-0, no shots on target.
The way you said it was such a straight face as well. I believe you there. We're going to come on to your prediction in a second, unless you want to stick with that, Ads. We're going to come back around you in a second. Lee, to come round to you. It will be a full, healthy group available for selection for Brentford as things stand here. Thomas Frank has 0 fitness worries coming into this game, as far as we understand. And I think for Antonio Conte, there's a full complement, of course, apart from Christian Romero. As we understand, obviously, Bergvine returns to that Spurs squad for Thursday's game after he picked up what was a mystery illness at this point. Lee, let's start with you. Thoughts on the game, and let's get a prediction.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it. I do think with some of the comments I agree, it's not Dr. Tottenham anymore. I think that I agree with the lads. He's had another week. The Burnley game maybe a blessing in disguise. He's had a whole week now to be with the entire squad. It's exactly what he needs. I remember Jose saying before, I just need time. A lot of us were kind of going, oh, whatever Jose. But now Conte's saying it, with top 3 manager in the world, we're going, okay, you can have the time. Well, he's got the time this week. I think Brentford were woeful. I'll be honest with you, I don't know why. I have seen Brentford a few times this season. I thought they were outstanding against Chelsea when they lost 1-0, and they were brilliant against Liverpool. I know they conceded 3, but who don't concede goals? But they beat Arsenal 2 with them.
A bit, yeah, it did beat Arsenal, yeah.
Yeah, and also as well, but they've had some bad results as well. They beat West Ham at their place as well, to be fair, and that was one of their plays. So they have got a bit of form earlier in the season, but they've had some bad results recently as well. Newcastle 3-3 when Newcastle bottom of the league. They've also lost at home to Norwich as well, and at the time they were bottom of the league. So maybe it's Dr. Brentford. Don't know about Dr. Tottenham. But look, I mean, let's not focus on them too much. Well, fair play for them to coming up and whatever. Let's focus on Tottenham. I think, not being funny, if we approach the game in the right manner with the right result, let's be honest, we made 9 changes for that Moore game. Them 9 changes ain't going to happen again. We're going to revert back to probably the team that you picked for Burnley, although I personally would be dropping Sanchez off at the airport, to be honest. But the point being is that it probably go with that same sort of team, and we can win. If it's under the lights, I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in Block 252. Come and say hello. We'll have a couple of beers, and hopefully we're looking at a big win. You want a prediction from me? I think we concede, and I do think Ivan Toney will score, to be honest. But I'm going 3-1 Tottenham.
3-1 Tottenham. Okay, Lee starting us off, and let's go around to Jamie next. Jamie, what are you going for?
Yeah, well, I think Lee was right. I was really enjoying kind of watching Brentford at the start of the year. But one thing they did was they seemed to be kind of so energetic, and they were all playing really hard the pitch. And I was kind of thinking maybe there would be a sort of drop off, and there certainly has been over the last couple of games. We've seen they've lost 3 of the last 5 matches. They drew with Newcastle. So for me, they look as though they have run out of steam a bit at the moment. Oh my God, yeah. So I'm really tempted fate here. I do think that Thursday is going to be a tough match still. I'm almost certain I'm going to definitely go for a 2-1 Spurs win, but I think it's going to be another fairly frustrating evening for Spurs. So I just got that feeling, unfortunately. But I still think we'll get the 3 points.
I mean, me and you, Jay, sat next to each other for that Leeds game. I think both of us by it was. I mean, at one point
we were celebrating when we got the
it's got this bad now. I've said to Jay, you know what? It was getting to a point. I think we've sat together 3 or 4 times. I said to Jay, have we even seen Spurs have a shot on target together?
Yeah.
Honestly, and we saw 2 goals. Couldn't believe
it. You need to start singing, boys. You need to start getting the songs going from where you're sitting. In the south, we're trying to get the songs going, boys.
Honestly, I tell you, I can't. Yeah, no comment on that. I tell you. Let's come around. Let's come on to you, Ads. Ads, we go for.
I am going for the same score as Lee. I was just thinking whilst Lee was chatting that I think this is the longest that Conte's had to prepare for a game since he's been at Spurs now. So it's not just like he's got that whole training, but he came in right before the Vitesse game. So there's actually been no time. So this is the longest time. I mean, to be fair, I thought we were going to come out like an absolute steam train against Leeds, and we came out like a broken down,
Yeah,
clapped out old car. But
yeah, we did.
I think what Conte called it as well, wasn't it? At one point.
Yeah, but I do think, I think he's going to work them really hard. He's got 5 days, so I'm going to go 3-1 as well. Actually,
3-1 Spurs. I'm going to join you. I can't see us not conceding. I do fancy a couple of goals, so I'm also going to go for a 3-1 Spurs win. Guys, we must close this show. It's been an absolute incredible evening as always. We always say to people, always no more than an hour and 15 minutes, and here we are. We're nearly 2 hours. What are we doing?
Viewers and listeners, you don't even need to worry about that anymore. You know that it's a 2-hour show. I say to my wife, "Oh, what are you doing?"
Down an hour.
Yeah, so did I.
I say, "Oh, about an hour." She went, "Oh,
4 hours."
My bedtime's at 10 as well, guys. So
I'm so sorry, Ed.
To be fair, it's like chatting in the pub, and with everything that's going on in COVID and wherever you all are in the world, we can still sit here and enjoy the fact that we're chatting about our beloved.
This is why they won't get Ed back on there for 6 months. That'll be it. He's banned. Honestly, the amount of comments coming through it. Right, guys, it's only fair to close the show with a couple of questions. Firstly, I think we had Ray come through. What's on our Christmas list? Let's keep it Spurs related. Let's go to ads firstly. Spurs related. What's on the Christmas list for Spurs ads? This could be results, it could be manager, it could be players. What's on the Christmas list? Keep it short and sweet.
Well, not losing.
Not losing. That'll do. Let's give us one thing. Lee, what's on your Christmas list? One thing Spurs related.
That we get maximum points and go through against West Ham before January the 1st. So up until January 1st, maximum points, and we get through via past West Ham.
I'm going with Lee. West Ham beating them.
West Ham. Okay, fantastic. Jay, over to you.
Or or I like Nathan's comment. Maybe him.
Yeah. Nathan's comment's decent. I'll go for that as well.
Yeah. Okay. We can't share that due to I say we are past supportership. We won't be showing that one. Over to you, Jay.
A shot on target in the first half would be nice. I think that'd be something that'd be nice. Yeah. But I'm gonna go for a creative midfielder. I think that's something that I want to see in January. That's gonna be on my
the level of this pod, right? Level of this pod. We was in a Champions League final 18 24 months ago, and now we're setting for a shot on target in the first half. You can't imagine the decline of this football club. Right, we're gonna finish it. People gone bombarding it. Right, January transfer target. Right, you got 3 players you can sign in January. Ads, give us a couple of names you'd like to see come in January just as we close this.
I don't know names. I'm rubbish for shit like that.
Positions. Let's get a position.
Right winger to play with Son and Kane. Central midfielder number 8. Left-sided centre back.
Yeah. Okay, Lee. Let's come over to you. Positions or players? What are you going for?
I would like to see Dusan Vlahovic come to our football club. I would play them 3 up front, or I would drop Kane in the hole. I know that go into a number 10 role and play Son and Vlahovic up top with Kane just floating about. I would actually like to see a number 8. I don't know who. When Jamie talks about creative midfielder, that needs to be that person. So it was the Tungai and Dembele or Lo Celso role, but we need to replace who they are. And I tell you what, and this is my top tip, right? Because you've got to think about signings. You've got to think about all the stuff that our good friend...
You say be quick, Ricky. You say be quick.
It's
I know. Sorry, you're getting banned to me. The last thing is Guesty, friend of the show, and obviously Alistair Gola talk about all the time, home quota and homegrown players and all that sort of stuff. I'd like to go and buy Tariq Lamptey from Brighton Hove Albion. I think he's an absolute superstar in the making. Buy him now. You could actually even bring Emerson Royale into the right-sided centre-back and play him like a big strapping, marauding centre-back, like Rudiger, for example, for Chelsea does on the other side. So for me, I'd like to see Tariq Lamptey come and play for Tottenham Hotspur.
It makes me laugh, Jason's wish for last one on Spurs is I'm going for a last one on Spurs. That
was my answer. 45 minutes. That was my answer. Something that lasted.
Jamie, let's come out of you, mate. What are we going for? Let's get some names from you. Come on, everyone's waiting for the names. This is the big build-up now. What are we going for names to close?
I'll be waiting for. Okay, so the creative midfielder for me, I'd really like to see Nkunku from RB Leipzig. I think he's having a really good year for them over in Germany. He's scoring a lot of goals. That's something we're also missing. Someone who can contribute to goals. So Nkunku would definitely be my shout. I think he's a very good player. Brozovic, Another player I really, really liked, did very well under Conte. Debris. Oh god, and I'm running. Yeah, okay, I'm running out of. I'm running out of.
Dreaming. You're dreaming, Jamie. You're being
I'm
told you're dreaming.
Too many names running through my head. So yeah, there's 3 players that I'd like to see signed.
Amazing. Listen, my thanks to Adam, to Lee, to Jamie. We are back for instant reaction after Tottenham Hotspur against Brentford on Thursday night. Like I say, it's been a long one. Thank you so much for all your support, all your love, but most importantly, as always, keep safe, keep well. And before we go, Ad, just very quickly, Ad, you have got a trophy to celebrate. Can we just 2 seconds, Ad? Tell us about the trophy. Very quickly.
Our work, Tilney Smith and Williamson, we won the best service provider to sports people.
There we go.
In the industry.
At last, a trophy on the last one on Spurs. The first of many this season. And Adam will come back on once we've got the quadruple wrapped up as well. From Lee, from Jamie, from Adam. Guys, most importantly as always, keep safe, keep well. We're back on Thursday. And as always, come on you mighty Spurs.